Zahvaljujem vas što ste danas došli, dame i gospodo. Moja čast da otvorim današnji skup na kojem ćemo čuti važne informacije vezane za izazove u implementaciji 5G mreža. Koristit ću, I will use our language in this presentation, but a large portion of today's talks will be in English, but I will switch a little bit in our language in order to present a couple of information about Montenegrin Academy of Science and Arts. Kao što sam rekao, današnji skup je u organizaciji Crnogorske akademije nauka i umjetnosti. U akademiji imamo 4 odjeljenja. Odjeljenje prirodnih nauka po kojem pripada ovaj današnji skup će ove godine organizovati gotovo 40 skupova, gotovo 40 aktivnosti, tribina, okruglih stolova, naučnih skupova i konferencija. Pored toga imamo desetak manjih projekata i 2 malo veća projekta koji će realizovati oko ovo naše odjeljenje. Moram da vam kažem jednu činjenicu da od 2021. godine ovo je prvi skup koji se odnosi na telekomunikacije, jer naše aktivnosti u informaciono-komunikacionim tehnologijama su ovih 5 godina prevashodno išlo u pravcu teme koja je na svim stranama aktuelna, a to je vještačka inteligencija. Tako da će ove godine jedan dobar dio aktivnosti ponovo biti u smjeru vještačke inteligencije, ali je veliko zadovoljstvo da smo potpisali ugovor o saradnji sa regulatornom agencijom za elektronske komunikacije i poštansku djelatnost i da kroz taj ugovor o saradnji planiramo da opet se vratimo na temu telekomunikacija koja je jedna od, da kažem, intelektualnih, kulturnih, ali i infrastrukturnih oblasti na kojima počiva čitava današnja i nauka i privreda. Tako da ćemo i ove godine organizovati barem još jedan okrugli sto, kako je ovaj okrugli sto vezan za 5G mreže. Naredni okrugli sto će biti još jedan korak dalje prema 6G tehnologijama. Razmatramo mogućnost da govorimo i o regulatornim izazovima i drugim izazovima u ovoj oblasti. Znači, opet kažem, meni je veliko zadovoljstvo da se vraćamo tamo gdje smo bili prije 5 godina i gdje je posljednji skup iz oblasti telekomunikacija koji je ovdje bio je tribina današnjeg paneliste, profesora Neškovića, koji je bio samo par dana prije nego što smo imali ono zaključavanje za korona krizu. Ja bih zamolio gospodina Milana Radulovića iz Agencije za elektronske komunikacije i poštansku djelatnost da vas pozdravi i da on možda otvori ovaj skup. Izvolite.
Poštovani akademiče Đuroviću, poštovani govornici, poštovane i cijenjene dame i gospodo, uvažene kolege, dozvolite mi da vas najsrdačnije pozdravim u Agenciji za elektronske komunikacije i poštansku djelatnost i da se zahvalim Crnogorskoj akademiji nauke i umjetnosti što nam je dala priliku da kroz ugovor o saradnji organizujemo ovaj naučni, recimo, tribinu ili skup u vezi sa implementacijom 5G mreža u Crnoj Gori. Ono što su naše očekivanje jesu da dobijemo danas i određene primjere kako je 5G mreža implementirana u pojedinim zemljama u okruženju, da vidimo neke buduće pravce u razvoju implementacije tih 5G mreža, od čega bi i naši operatori i privredna društva trebalo da imaju koristi u budućem radu. Da ne dužimo dalje, želio bih vam uspješan današnji rad i još jednom zahvaljujem se i Crnogorskoj akademiji nauke i umjetnosti i vama kao govornicima na današnjoj prezentaciji u vezi sa implementacijom 5G mreža u Crnoj Gori. Hvala vam.
Thank you very much. Now we'll going to a working session, and first lecture will be delivered by Jaroslav Ponder, who is coming from International Telecommunication Union Office for Europe, from Switzerland. Unfortunately, Mr. Ponder, who is almost like host in Montenegro every year, is regularly here in collaboration with the Agency for Electronic Communication and Postal Services, and he is organizing and supporting activities of agency for this region. And it's my great pleasure that he will develop this talk by using electronic means. And I hope that Mr. Ponder is here and he will be join us for a couple of seconds. Welcome. Mr. Ponder.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Just to double check if you can hear me.
Everything is fine, I think.
Okay, the second checkup if you can see the slides. Now you can see.
Oh, okay. Now it's okay. Great.
Now you can see. Okay,
Everything is okay. Oh, good.
Apologies for this technical glitch, but it's our great pleasure to be with you, and thank you very much for inviting the ITU and taking our contribution into account while you're deliberating on the advancements on the 5G in Montenegro. First of all, I would also like to thank the EKIP, in particular the President of the Council, for great collaboration, and as well the government for joint cooperation on several projects. So thank you very much. It was my great pleasure to be even this week in the country. So let's delve into the talking points. For those who are not that familiar with the ITU, let me go through a few slides.
Okay.
It's slide change. Can
Yes.
I confirm you?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So, as you know, ITU is the UN specialized agency for the ICTs. We were established over 160 years ago, accompanying the ICT sector from its beginning and going through the wave of the technological changes, which led us to the expansion of the focus of the ITU, taking a look at the connectivity, but also at the meaningfulness of the connectivity, taking a look how those technological developments can impact the different sectors, how first the internet, then the satellite communication, then AI can be integrated into the real life, and how also our contribution should be shaped in order to make sure that interoperability of the systems is ensured and the quality of services, likewise the resilience of the infrastructure remains at the top level, and the security of users is ensured. Of course, talking about the 5G, it's very important also to mark that ITU is relying on the treaty-based agreement, which is, I think, one of the most important fundamentals of the ITU work related to managing the frequencies. We started this journey in 1965, but then, of course, in 1992, with the establishment of the communication sector, we advanced work in terms of the development and further development of the radio regulations, which already for more than 119 years provides the reference point, binding reference point for the implementation and rollout of the new technologies worldwide. Of course, we are very special in the UN system because we are working with the private sector, universities, and engaging also with the academia. So that's why today's meeting and contribution has very special meaning for us because we are very much appreciating contributing to your discussion. Likewise, we extend invitation to your members to join our work streams, and including the community of the academia members, which is growing. And as of today, we have more than 180 academic members working with us on the different aspects, including the standards, development, policy issues, and so on. Of course, when you're talking about the ITU, we're having the three major pillars. Radio communication already addressed, very important for the 5G because of the spectrum management, but likewise, in order to make the implementation worldwide of the 5G, we need the technical standards and also the policy and regulatory considerations, making sure that the enabling environment set at the country level is advanced. Let me go straight to our core of the intervention. We are living very exciting times. The connectivity becomes universal. As of today, end of 2025, However, we have still 2.2 billion people remaining offline. When we first time organized the World Telecommunication Development Conference, which was in 1994, over 30 years ago, less than 1% of the world was online. And the fixed telephone lines outnumbers internet users 30 to 1. Of course, this has changed. We see on the graph how rapidly we have experienced the expansion of the mobile cellular subscriptions. But of course, the question is how to bridge the gap, and with the aspirational targets which ITU is tracking, we tried recently also to estimate how much it would cost in order to connect the world. And we came to the conclusion that almost 2.8 trillion US dollars are needed in the current prices in order to connect everyone. So, of course, only when you're talking about the capex investment, it brings us to the level of 1.7 trillion, which is a significant number. Of course, this impact and expectations are much lesser in Europe, as Europe has made already the homework investing strategically in the rollout of the infrastructure, including in your country, which belongs to one of the quite well connected with the very robust infrastructure, including 5G. But of course, this investment is visible. So we are seeing huge investments going into the 5G expansion over the past 5 years. Mobile operators worldwide have invested more than 500 billion in the global internet connectivity infrastructure. We see, including in Europe, the 5G capex was one of high. But the 5G as a percentage of the total capex was the top priority. So 90% of our investment went into the 5G as the strategic investments for the future. This, of course, gave us advantage of advancing with the 5G rollout much stronger in comparison to the other regions and to the rest of the world. It places us really in the forefront of the global run. With these data are 2024/2025, so we see that on average 75% of the population of Europe is covered with the 5G signal, which is very good news. Of course, for Montenegro, it's not the reference point because we are much further in terms of the connectivity and the infrastructure 5G availability in the country. Which is visible also in the review of the availability of the 5G across Europe. But still the problem of the availability of the 5G exists. We have still dominance of the 5G infrastructure being rolled out exclusively or dominantly in urban areas, while the rural areas are remaining at the low pathway. Also, in terms of the subscriptions, per 100 inhabitants in Europe, still the numbers in Europe are at the level of only 45%. In comparison to total of 116% of the population using the mobile telephone. But when we are taking a look at the share of the internet users, we see that there is no doubt mobile infrastructure is the top way and the mean of accessing the internet, and this is one of the top priorities for all countries. We observe also that the affordability in Europe, it doesn't exist, it's not creating any challenges in terms of the barrier to access the internet by the mobile infrastructure. Also, in terms of the investment, we observe diverse dynamics. Congratulations to Montenegro for being one of the biggest leaders in terms of the investment and coming over the last 5 years in the infrastructure, which pays off, of course, with the accelerated rollout of the 5G in the country. Of course, this is reflected also in the contribution of the sector to the GDP, which also in terms of the Montenegro, we see quite significant impact in these terms. But 5G is also starts to be challenged. The universality of the connectivity, thanks to the satellite connectivity, brings the new opportunities for making the access to the internet and to the net universal. This trend is currently, in fact, overwhelming the whole industry, and the investments growing in the satellite business are growing. The number of satellites being launched on the annual basis are growing, going into the thousands. Just as you know, the ITU is in charge of the filing all plans related to the satellites. And I think we were recently also very much surprised with the recent filing of one of the Chinese provider asking for the filing of the 13 constellations with the 200,000 satellites to be launched within the upcoming 3-4 years. So even those numbers which we are having in front of us, we see that the dynamics is growing and the numbers will be going up. Also, in terms of the payloads, launch traffic, we see the exponentially increase of the payloads launch, which also reflects how important this infrastructure becomes. Also, in terms of the predictions of the business models, we see significant opportunities arising for the connectivity, where the different business stakeholders are also pursuing to see if out of the communication, Internet of Things communication, direct-to-device communication, and general communication, much more revenues can be generated. I would say it's still not there. Taking a look at the evolution of the satellite broadband subscriptions, for example, we see that the numbers are still very moderate, dominating, of course, very much Asia, and the contribution and the portion of the European subscriptions in global overview is still remaining low, but the peak is coming in this terms. In this context, of course, the question arises of how ITU's decisions can influence the rollout of the 5G, 6G, and also the vision of the IMT 2030. As all of you are aware, the ITU on each 4 years is hosting the World Telecommunication Conference to revise the regulation and to set the new trends in terms of the technologies. A recent conference was held in Dubai. We ended up with several resolutions being adopted and a lot of takeaways for the further work on the standardization and harmonization of the spectrum. That was enabling the rollout of the only 5G, but also 6G and integration of the satellites communication into the direct-to-device communication. So, of course, when we are taking a look at the work of the ITU and aspirations for the upcoming WRC 2027, we see a strong dominance of the propositions I think 80% of the current items and submissions and proposals for consideration are concerning the satellite and broadcasting satellite communication and mobile satellite communication requirements for the spectrum to enable those technologies. So therefore, the meaning of the work meaning of the work of the ITU, in particular, the work parting 4A, 4C, 5B, and 5D, is growing, as those decisions will be binding and will impact the real business. And we are taking a look at the conference preparatory meetings, which will have to accelerate. And as the conference is already announced to be held in China in 2027, and the time is right. In this sense, we need to take a look also at the different phases. We started with the IMT and 2000. Then we have the IMT Advanced, which was standardized, frequencies harmonized. And then now, currently, we're working towards the IMT 2030, so-called 6G. This is something what we are at the ITU calling as the IMT 2030, which allows also to incorporate also different angles of the 6G in terms of the standardization and the spectrum allocation. This slide provides you a better understanding of the timelines and the expectations towards the arriving to the newer recommendations of the M series with detailed specification of the terrestrial radio interfaces and the International Mobile Telecommunication 2030. So if there is the interest of engaging much more profoundly in this work, I think this is the time to get into this work stream. But of course, the question with the first decisions on the IMT 2030 have been already made. Recommendation 2160 provides the framework and overall objectives of the future development of the IMT for 2030 and beyond, defining the expectations, but also providing the different 6 user scenarios with the introduction of the new focus on the ubiquitous connectivity, AI and communication, and integrated sensing and communication. So, of course, in this sense, we have, in terms of the characteristics of the 6G, out of the, there are like 9 IoT framework recommendations identifies 15 capabilities for 6G technology. 9 of those capabilities are derived from the existing 5G. And then the range of values given for capabilities are estimated targets for research and investigations of the IMT 2030s. So all values in the range have equal priority in research and investigation. For each usage scenario, and single or multiple values within the range would be developed in the future in other ITU recommendations report. And IMT is expected to help address the need of increased environmental, social, and economic sustainability. So that's why the user cases and expectations towards these technologies are playing so important role. And this is the reason why the ITU are working with a lot of verticals, the private verticals, in order to see how these new standards might provide the expected value added. And how also the requirements for the private networks might be tackled, as this is also the growing niche for the 6G, what we observed already in the 5G environment. So in these terms, of course, we can compare the different generations in terms of the employment, equity, and day trade, latency. So this performance is becoming much better, ultra efficient in terms of the energy consumption, reliability, and many more. But of course, the work on the IoT satellite has also started in the ITO with the first decisions which would bring also some requirements from the non-terrestrial network related decisions into the discussions on the IoT 2030. This is the timeline for the standardization work of the spectrum, where we are observing quite big interest of the industry and engagement aimed at the 2030 with the clear vision and also synchronization with other ongoing standardization processes, in particular under the 3G PPP. But of course, talking about the framework of the ITU-R, we need to mention that also this framework is supported by the ongoing work on the standardization of the equipment and many other issues like security, interoperability and the T sector. And some work has been already done, but there are some draft new recommendations also related to the fixed mobile satellite convergence, which will have the big potential for being taken into account once we're developing the new vision for 2030. So with this, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I hope that we brought to this discussion also the other aspects of the importance for the rollout of the 5G and also paving the way towards the 6G at the country level. Of course, we are congratulating you for the progress already made, because you are already advancing quite strongly in terms of the rollout of the infrastructure, but we would like to also hear, and this would be our dream, in fact, to hear about the different business cases which are specifically using the 5G for advancing different work in the different sectors, to have business cases enhanced with real examples from countries like yours, which is leading on the 5G rollout. So with this, I would like to thank you very much for engaging us. Also, likewise, I would like to apologize that I will have to disconnect after the presentation, but I remain at your disposal for any kind of the follow-up questions. Thank you very much.
After small obstacles, we got very insightful lecture, full and rich of facts. Since Mr. Ponder has to leave to other meeting, maybe a couple of questions can be, is anybody interested? Maybe I can ask you something about, do you have some projection about business model of existing communication providers in the time of so large expansion of the satellite connectivity?
At this moment, we are in the process of collecting those. So I don't have direct answer to your question, because we're indeed in the process of collecting those. Is one of the focus areas where ITU is currently prioritizing a lot, and engaging the private sector as well to our work.
It seems to me that after a couple of attempts to use worldwide satellite communication, time of satellite communication somehow abruptly came almost in a couple of years. Okay. Is there any further note or question? Please.
Hi. Hi, Yanis here from Internet Institute. I have one question. Based on your global view, how do you see these private 5G networks? How important are they for the ecosystem? And how you believe they can push 5G
I
deployment?
cannot hear. I think this professor has to switch off his microphone, but I can hear you.
Thank you. Hi, Yanis here. Yes, apologies for this. So basically my question is the following. Based on your global view, how important do you believe is, let's say, private 5G deployment in this ecosystem? How you can, let's say, relate the global view to Montenegro? How important is, let's say, for pushing this 5G technology in Montenegro? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We believe that, well, and I think the numbers are showing that the private deployment is one of the space which is evolving a lot, where also the understanding of the sectors match of the value added for deployment of the private networks. 5G based, specifically using the specifications and value added of the 5G. So we see a lot of potential in that, apart from the rollout at the national level. So of course this is very much depending on the industry and the structure of the economy and the requirements and demands of the country. So I'm not familiar to the extent to assess and estimate the opportunities in Montenegro, but definitely for the industrial deployment, it has a huge potential for growth. And this is also something where we would like to see happening in Europe. On the other note, also in terms of the implication of the ITU work for the rollout of the 5G, the engagement of the regulatory authority and the ministry in the work on the spectrum and standardization of the key aspects. Let me mention that just in 2 weeks we'll be meeting in Athens at the regional radio communication seminar, where one of the main topics on the forum part will be direct to device. We see quite a lot of opportunities related to rollout also of this technology, which in particular offers the great opportunities for disconnected and remote areas. Taking a look at the reports and the reporting on the access in your country, the number of those areas in your country is quite limited because you have quite good coverage of infrastructure at this moment already. But of course, there are always the cases where the remote areas are not offering the economic model allowing to put the rollouts, the 5G infrastructure, therefore maybe direct-to-device communication might be a good opportunity, alternative. So we're looking forward to continue cooperation with the EKIP and the ministry on that, and we'll be also happy with engagement of the academia in the work.
One more question is coming from Milan Radulovic.
Hello, Mr. Ponder. I would like to thank you very much for your time and for your participation in this roundtable. Since you presented here very interesting statistics, would you be kind to answer the question related to use of 5G in agriculture, since the production of food is very important and there are plenty of business cases using 5G networks in agriculture. From the point of view of United Nations, is it possible to use those outcomes of these business cases in order to implement in the other countries in the region, in Europe or the other parts of the world? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I don't have the exact name of these cases, but we have the full program which is focusing on the rollout of the digital agriculture in different regions, in particular in Asia Pacific. Recently, we were working with the operators, taking a look and testing how the 5G might offer the good opportunities of first deployment of the private network and then testing the impact on the production and use of different applications. So I think this might be a good opportunity to share this also with you and the results of this work, and also taking a look if there will be any other case studies in Europe as well on the 5G. So I will take this as the homework from this meeting and to provide the materials.
Thank you very much again to Mr. Ponder, and I hope that we will see each other again in Montenegro soon. Thank you very much for support to EKIP and to support for our community, both business and academia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are continuing our program with the second lecture. That second lecture on practical challenges in 5G network deployment will be delivered by Professor Aleksandar Nešković, who is coming from School of Electrical Engineering, University of Belgrade in Serbia. You can use any language you think that it is.
I can speak both Serbian or English, but if all participants are native Serbian speaking, it's better to speak in our language.
Maybe it's better, okay, but...
Yeah. Okay. Dobar dan, za one koji me ne znaju, ja sam Aleksandar Nešković, dolazim sa Elektrotehničkog fakulteta i danas ću probati da osvetlim neke praktične probleme, na engleskom se kaže challenges, koji se tiču izgradnje 5G mreža. Nažalost, mi u Srbiji smo sa 5G servisima krenuli tek sa pre jedno meseci i po dana, tako da nemamo direktnih iskustava i onih pravih glavobolja. Ali ću ja probati da sagledam na osnovu nekih svetskih i evropskih iskustava koji su to osnovni problemi koji muče naš sektor. Prvo ću se podsjetiti onoga o čemu smo pričali pre više godina na ovom istom mestu, šta smo očekivali kada smo pričali o uvođenju 5G-a. Jedna od priča je bila samovozeća autonomna vozila. Pričali smo o čitavom nizu uređaja na telu, u telu, na odeći koji se tiču zdravlja. Pričali smo o virtualnoj realnosti, proširenoj realnosti, gde povezujemo stvarnu sliku i stvarni svet sa dopunskim bazama, bilo za potrebe hirurgije, instalacije uređaja, dakle, čitav niz raznoraznih aktivnosti. Pričali smo o pametnom svetu. Pametne energetske mreže, pametni gradovi, pametna poljoprivreda, evo gospodin Milan što je pitao, pametno ovo, pametno ono, pametne naočare, sve to zovemo danas jednim istim imenom IoT ili malo šire, još bolje IoFi. Ono što karakteriše sve ove proizvode je da bez njih ne možete, vaša privreda neće biti konkurentna na svetskom tržištu ako ih ne uvodite, ali je činjenica da je ovaj proces spor. Jer o ovim smart tehnologijama smo počeli da pričamo pre 15 i više godina, da ih nemamo tako masovno. Razlog je vrlo jednostavan. Njihovo uvođenje zahteva nekakvo vreme. U nekoj daljoj perspektivi, kada smo pričali o 5G-u, imali smo viziju koja dalje stoji, a to je da naši mobilni terminali polako počinju da zamenjuju i računare. Dakle, ne retko vaš mobilni terminal koji držite u džepu ima bolje procesore nego vaš desktop ili laptop računar. Pa se onda postavlja pitanje što stalno žonglirate s podacima. Dakle, sve to možete da radite preko jedne iste platforme, potrebni su interfejsi. Sad, prošlo je 6, 7, 8 godina kako u kojoj zemlji, dokle smo stigli. Ako primetite, praktično gotovo ništa od ovog prethodnog još nije sasvim zrelo. Kad pogledamo neku statistiku osnovnu, a i kolega je malo pro svojoj prezentaciji to naglasio, vi u Evropi praktično gotovo u svim zemljama imate da je populacija stanovništva pokrivena na nivou 90% i više. Između ostalog zato što ih regulatori teraju na taj stepen pokrivanja. Međutim, kada pričamo o pokrivenosti teritorije, tu brojke nisu tako sjajne, čak i u bogatijim zemljama. Pa, primjera radi, imate Belgiju u kojoj imate da je pokriveno negde, ovo je, ajde da kažemo, slajd od prošle godine, dakle danas je to možda na nivou oko 15% teritorije samo. I to je jedan od ozbiljnih problema. Kad pričamo o Srbiji, interesantno je da je prva 5G bazna stanica u Evropi bila postavljena u Srbiji, na našem naučno-tehnološkom parku, 2019. godine, proizvodnje Huawei i ona i dan danas uspešno radi, međutim, uglavnom zbog političkih razloga mi smo čekali do decembra prošle godine sa početkom 5G servisa. Zvanično objašnjenje je da smo bili dalekovidi, pa smo shvatili da ovi ostali osnovni servisi o kojima sam malo pre pričao nisu još zreli, pa i nema potrebe za 5G-om, pa smo mi sačekali bolje vreme kad ta oprema postane i jeftinija i lakša za implementaciju i ne može čovjek da kaže, ima i to smisla, nije baš da je bez smisla. Kad pričamo o Evropi, u Evropi je nažalost ostala samo jedna zemlja koja još uvek nema 5G, to je naš sused Bosna i Hercegovina, ali nadamo se da će i ona uskoro krenuti sa 5G. Na globalnom nivou isto imamo neke brojke iz kojih svašta nešto možemo interesantno da vidimo. Ono što je meni bilo prosto neverovatno, a jeste iznenađujuće, ako pogledate broj instaliranih baznih stanica, u Kini imate 3 puta više instaliranih baznih stanica nego u svim ostalim zemljama na planeti zajedno. Dakle, na neki način to ukazuje da kad pričamo sad o novim tehnologijama, ipak ne možemo da se ne otmemo utisku da su kineske kompanije lideri. Što se tiče same populacije, odnosno gustine izgrađenosti, interesantno, Kinezi nisu na prvom mjestu i pored ovolikog broja baznih stanica. Južna Koreja ima praktično više nego duplo instaliranih baznih stanica po glavi stanovnika, a razlog je vrlo jednostavan. Dakle, Samsung je kompanija na kojoj počiva južnokorejska privreda dominantno i oni su otvorili svoju zemlju za masovnu implementaciju kao test područje da bi mogli da Samsung može da ostvaruje vrlo velike prihode na globalnom nivou. U pogledu u odnosu na Evropu, dakle, Evropa u odnosu na Kinu ima 10 puta manjih baznih stanica. Sad, šta je karakteristika? Većina servisa koje mi sagledavamo da treba da budu oni ključni servisi ili killer servisi, kako smo ih nekad davno zvali, nisu još spremni iz raznoraznih razloga. Industrija motornih vozila ne može da se dogovori i dalje oko standarda. Po mom ličnom mišljenju, Musk je odveo cijelu industriju u jednom pogrešnom smjeru jer ono vozila želi da napravi čoveka. Dakle, elektroinženjer da je pravio autonomno vozilo ne bi pravio kameru pa analizirao na osnovu kamere da li je ovaj znak ovakav ili onakav u mraku, pod snežnim uslovima i tako dalje. Mi bismo postavili, dakle, predajnike za svaki znak. Gledajte, to je mnogo jeftinije i sigurnije i bezbednije. No, na stranu taj deo. Generalno, u autoindustriji ne mogu da se dogovore još uvek ni kako će izgleda onaj utikač za punjenje automobila, tako da ćemo taj razvoj morati još malko da sačekamo. Slično i sa drugim servisima koje sam ovde ukratko prikazao malo pre. Ono što je takođe ostao problem, to je da su nam ruralni krajevi uglavnom slabije pokriveni, čak i u vrlo bogatim zemljama, i to je jedno otvoreno pitanje iz prostog razloga ako ne pokrijete ruralne krajeve, vi nemate više nadu da će ljudi doći ponovo tamo da žive, jer danas je imati mobilni servis, dakle, osnovni preduslov za život. I to je pitanje koje sve države moraju da rešavaju. S druge strane, činjenica je da je 5G zrela tehnologija, vrlo kvalitetna tehnologija. Protoci su izuzetno veliki. Dakle, u prosjeku vi preko 100 megabita u sekundi možete da pružite svakom korisniku. Vrlo mala kašnjenja, nisu 1 milisekund, ali već smo na nekoliko milisekundi, dovoljno za 99,999% aplikacija. Vrlo visoka pouzdanost. Kapaciteti koje nam 5G pruža mogu već uspešno da zamenjuju Wi-Fi mreže, pa se postavlja pitanje da li ćemo u budućnosti uopšte i trebati Wi-Fi mreže. Dakle, ako imamo pretplatu i ako je to vrlo jeftino, što bi sad stalno nešto žonglirali, tražili pasvorde i ostalo. Takođe, 5G daje podršku za industrijske servise, koje zahtevaju, kad pričamo o industriji, ne mislim na spore industrijske servise, tu se obično misli na brze industrijske servise, dakle gde vi kontrolišete proces preko video snimaka i vršite prenos video sadržaja u realnom vremenu, 5G to može vrlo uspešno da radi. Naročito kroz privatne mreže realizovane na ovaj ili na onaj način. Ono što takođe 5G polako, čak ne ni polako može da preuzima i sadržaje od kablovskih operatora u smislu isporuke onih krajnjih sadržaja. Dakle, suštinski dobijamo platformu koja je jako dobra. Ono što karakteriše zahteve korisnika, to je i dalji rast, eksponencijalni rast saobraćajnih zahteva. Taj rast ne prestaje. Ne rastu samo saobraćajni zahtevi, nego raste i broj uređaja koji korisnici koriste. Po jednoj statistici koju sam našao u Sjedinjenim državama u poslednjih 5 godina je recimo broj uređaja po glavi stanovnika porastao sa 8 na preko 13 uređaja po jednom korisniku. Što već vam govori o brojnosti pojedinačnih, da kažemo, pretplata. Što se tiče protoka, oni su u odnosu na 4G 3 puta veći i za mobilni i za fiksni pristup, što je jako dobro, međutim, sve je ovo lepo. I sad kad hvalimo 5G, to neće mora da se plati. A plaća se povećanom kompleksnošću mreže. I tu dolazimo dotle. Dakle, mreže su vrlo kompleksne, za razliku od nekih starijih generacija, sad imamo mnogo širu paletu uređaja, pre smo imali samo mobilni telefon, sad imamo nekakve senzore, raznih tipova. Imamo različite servise koji se pružaju korisnicima, različite tipove aplikacija i svaki od tih segmenta ima neke svoje zahteve, što značajno povećava kompleksnost kada treba da vodite jednu ovakvu mrežu. I tu dolazimo onda do problema, odnosno lepši termin je izazova koje treba da rešimo, jer za inženjere nema problema, sve su to samo izazovi. I sad zbog relativno kratkog vremena ja ću se fokusirati možda na neke najznačajnije izazove. Prvo, kad pričamo o mobilnim mrežama, ljudi koji vode mobilne mreže znaju da tu imaju vrlo veliku glavobolju, a to je stalno investiranje. Vi u mobilnu mrežu stalno morate da investirate i to ne mala sredstva. To da biste dobili 5G košta jako puno. I ono što je činjenica, pre 2-3 godine, prema Global Finance magazinu, 2 najveća operatora u Sjedinjenim državama, AT&T i Verizon, su bili na listi najzaduženijih kompanija u svetu. Danas je situacija nešto bolja, ali i dalje nije tako sjajna. Jer da biste sve ovo omogućili korisnicima, da na klik u realnom vremenu možemo da gledamo filmove, da upravljamo mašinama, tu mora sigurno mnogo da se ulaže. Naravno, čim je kompleksnost velika i problem je upravljanja i održavanja jedne takve mreže. S druge strane, operatori širom sveta su ušli u investicije sa nekakvim procenama odgovarajućeg broja pretplatnika. Pokazuje se da taj broj pretplatnika koji realno koriste 5G servise, pa i nije takav kao što se očekivalo. Razlog opet jednostavan. Danas mobilni pretplatnici, a i mi smo neki od njih, uglavnom 5G sagledavaju kao nešto bolji 4G. Dakle, brži, koji omogućava veće protoke. Ali nemamo ove još nove servise, a pošto nemamo te nove servise, onda nemamo toliki broj korisnika koji bi koristili mrežu, a i s druge strane, plaćali i opravdavali investiciju mobilnih operatora. Takođe, jedna bolna tačka, kad pričamo o mobilnim operatorima, to su prihodi. Do 2019. Prihod u našem mobilnom sektoru je bio veći od prihoda digitalnih platformi, Amazona, Googlea i tako dalje. Od 2019. imamo da su mobilni operatori ušli u zasisjenje sa svojim prihodima i dobitima, a s druge strane imamo da digitalne platforme imaju eksponencijalni rast. Što je isto interesantno, jer te digitalne platforme te svoje servise zatvaraju preko mobilnih operatora, što nije, priznaćete, baš sasvim usaglašeno u krajnjoj liniji. I to se nastavlja i dalje. Naravno, pričali smo o IoT-u i jednom zdravom konceptu. On je za državu vrlo značajan, jer ako ne transformišete privredu, vi niste konkurentni. Međutim, to je proces o kome se mnogo pričalo, mnogo nade se polagalo u 5G. Sa stanovišta operatora to sporo ide. Mi u Srbiji imamo neke primjere baš u poljoprivredi koji su sjajni, čak i na evropskom nivou. Ima Biosense institut koji je to implementirao u punoj meri. Imamo nemalo rešenja koje se tiču farmi, svinja, živine i tako dalje, ali to nije nešto na što su navikli mobilni operatori, da podignu baznu stanicu, učitaju softver i da se masovno implementira. Ovo zahteva vreme. Dakle, to će ići, nije sporno, sjajno je, ali je sporno. A onda se postavlja pitanje, uložili ste velike pare odjednom, a imate spor povraćaj novca. Ili, šta je još karakteristično? Da, pričali smo danas, veštačka inteligencija uvodi se na sva zvona svuda. To postavlja zahteve pred operatore, da svoje eksperte mora da obuči u tom pravcu, jer mobilni operatori su navikli da rade na jedan način, a sad sve više moraju da koriste alate sa kojima će optimizovati mrežu, pratiti iskustvo korisnika, raditi prediktivno održavanje i tako dalje, i tako dalje. Jedan sledeći aspekt koji je bolna rana svih nas, ne samo 5G mreža i mobilnih operatora, sajber-bezbjednost. Ona se tiče i operatora, i korisnika, i države u krajnjoj liniji, i to je segment koji postaje sve kritičniji. S jedne strane, broj napada se povećava, mreže postaju sve složenije, imamo sve više ulaznih tačaka odakle napadi mogu da se dogode. I još jedan bitan aspekt u koji još nismo ušli, a tek ćemo da imamo glavobolju, a to imamo neke servise od kojih nam zavisi život. Dakle, zamislite nas, uđemo u autonomno vozilo, a neko izazove saobraćajnu nesreću, ili nas zaključa u kolima, ili nas odvede i kidnapuje na neku drugu stranu, pravi mobilne botove i tako dalje. Dakle, o tome još ne razmišljamo, a već imamo glavobolju. I ovo je pravi trenutak da i države prvenstveno zajedno s operatorima počnu da razmišljaju o regulatornim i praktičnim okvirima kako će da regulišu ove oblasti, jer od njih to više nije šala. Do sad mi mobilni telefon koristimo tako, okrenuo sam ja neku stranicu, pa ako ne radi, probaću ponovo. Ali da li možemo mi 2 puta da živimo? Ako poginemo zato što nije neko vozilo skrenulo levo kada je trebalo. Dakle, to je jedna vrlo, vrlo ozbiljna glavobolja. Idemo dalje. Ako pričamo sad o marketingu, tu imamo u nemalo broju državu rat cena između operatora i tu odjednom dolazimo do jednog ključnog problema. Današnji operatori, današnji korisnici, izvinjam se, kako biraju operatori? Često u tehničkim krugovima mi pričamo, ova je mreža kvalitetnija, korisnici će otići na kvalitetniju mrežu. Nije tako. Dakle, suštinski, krajnji korisnik danas bira ono što je jeftinije. Čak je spreman da ide na lošiji kvalitet da bi nešto manje platio. I sad tu dolazimo do problema. U državama gde su operatori ušli u rat cena, kvalitet mora da pada ispod one dozvoljene granice. I sad opet imamo tu ulogu države i regulatora. To je uloga regulatora da forsira operatore da zadrže kvalitet, da ne smiju da padnu ispod neke granice. Jer ako ih puste na tržištu da rade samostalno, imamo već gomilu država gde se to dešava, tu kvalitet drastično pada i tu sami korisnici, a i država imaju veliki problem. Naravno, kad pričamo o marketingu, to je više stvar operatora, navike korisnika se menjaju, rade na različitim mestima, mrežu gledaju kao servis. S druge strane, imamo nestabilna vremena. Svedoci smo tih nestabilnih vremena. Kako ono kažu, ako hoćete da vas neko prokune, samo treba da vam poželi da živite u interesantnim vremenima, a izgleda smo mi u tim interesantnim vremenima. Imamo ratove, pa onda ekonomske krize, pa pandemije, COVID i tako dalje, što je realna glavobolja za operatora, posledično onda i za države, a to je što s jedne strane operatori moraju da ulože mnogo, što u licencu, što u opremu, a ulaze u period kad ekonomija nije tako stabilna. Ono što je dobra strana, što su mobilni servisi danas postali jedan resursni, osnovni životni resurs svakog čoveka, pa će ljudi radije da se odreknu nekih drugih stvari, možda ne tako dobrih kola, ili će smanjiti malo grejanje u kući, ali će pristup internetu morati da imaju. Međutim, istraživanja u marketing domenu pokazuju da korisnici će takođe radije da smanje kablovske servise, primjera radi, što takođe utiče na dobit samih kompanija. S jedne strane imamo da korisnici će dati stabilnost mobilnim operatorima čak u teškim vremenima, ali to može u nekim trenucima da napravi i problem, zato što će se odreći jednog dela servisa. Šta imamo još od čistih izazova? Imamo razne regulatorne, često i političke, dakle, zahteve, odnosno ograničenja. Videli smo malo pre, namjerno sam pokazao onaj slajd gde se jasno vidi da ne možete da kažete da kineska oprema nije kvalitetna kad imaju 4,5 miliona instaliranih baznih stanica samo u Kini. A kao što znate, u Evropi smo zabranili postavljanje, dakle, kineske opreme iz bezbjednosnih razloga. I to će biti jedan izazov na globalnom nivou, prvenstveno za Evropu i za Ameriku, jer vi imate jeftiniju opremu koja je evidentno kvalitetna, a ne možete da je koristite. Ali to je izvan ovog našeg kruga. To je više političko pitanje, ali ono jeste realno, jer je malo u sukobu sa onim realnim činjeničnim stanjem na terenu. Ima još jedno interesantno pitanje koje vredi i, ajde da kažemo, i značajnije više diskutovati, a to je upravljanje korisničkim podacima. Kao što znate, operator i kroz operatora prolazi čitav niz podataka, tako da operator, kad bi posmatrao pojedinačnog korisnika, od njemu može svašta da sazna. Međutim, u licenciji kod svakog operatora stoji, i zakonom je praktično svim državama zabranjeno, da te personalne podatke operator ne može da koristi. Recimo za marketinške potrebe. Gledajte, to je jedan apsurd, zato što te iste podatke, samo možda slabije, digitalne platforme slobodno koriste. E sad, šta je tu problem? Svake države. Kad imate, recimo, Google ili Amazon, vi se reklamirate. Gomila lokalnih kompanija se reklamira tako što se reklamira na Google. Masovno se radi. Ali vi to plaćate. I vi sad imate jedan konstantan, dakle, protok para prema tipično Kaliforniji, primjera radi. I sad koliko da god vam je kasica, ako iz jednog društva pare idu stalno na jednu stranu, vi de facto postajete siromašni. Dozvolili ste tim platformama da koriste podatke korisnika da bi se reklama realizovala. Operatorima ne dozvoljavate. E sad, naravno, Evropa je prepoznala taj problem i uvela je GDPR da ograniči upotrebu podataka korisnika, ali, koliko je meni poznato, operatori još ne koriste dakle, taj GDPR, da se izbore za pravo da i oni koriste, dakle, podatke o korisnici. Jer to su domaće kompanije i ako vi marketing za lokalni sadržaj realizujete u jednoj zemlji, te pare ostaju u toj zemlji. Ne odlivaju se negde sa strane. Dakle, imate apsurd da domaćoj kompaniji ne dozvoljavate nešto što dajete nekoj stranoj kompaniji. I o tome će sigurno, verovatno, u buduće biti još nekakvih analiza i preporuka kako da se izađe iz te situacije. Šta imamo još od izazova? Naravno, danas su buzzwords, zelena tehnologija, u zelenu tehnologiju ide i problem sa đubretom u krajnjoj liniji. Gledajte, naši mobilni sistemi proizvode mnogo đubreta. To je pitanje za države. Dakle, vi imate milione, čak i u Crnoj Gori, mobilnih terminala koji se posle istog vremena bacaju. U njima su baterije, plastika, imate bazne stanice. Dakle, elektronskog otpada imate u enormnoj količini. I to mora na adekvatan način da se prati, da se reciklira kako posle 10-15 godina ne bismo došli u situaciju da imamo potpuno zagađenu teritoriju oko nas. O ruralnom području, to sam dotakao, to je bolna tema i to svaka država mora ozbiljno da razmatra, jer ako u ruralu, kao što rekoh, dakle, šta je situacija? To je u većini zemalja. I u Srbiji je tako, i u Crnoj Gori je tako. Mobilni operator ili operator mobilnog servisa, pa neće podizati mrežu u regijama gde nema dovoljne populacije korisnika. Sad možemo diskutovati šta znači dovoljne populacije korisnika. Ali ako se ne podigne mreža u tim slabo naseljenim područjima, narod će da ode. Pa tek onda nećete imati nikog. I to znači da više u ta područja nikad niko neće doći, jer, evo primjera, ja imam neku dalju sestru, ona tamo u Takovu je progresivna ovako džambas i sad napravila bi neku veliku štalu za proizvodnju goveda, niko neće da radi, jer nema pokrivanja. Dakle, vi ste jedan divan kraj, koji je bogat sam po sebi, u stvari opustošen. I to je izazov za sve države kako će da reše taj segment. On mnogo košta, mora dugoročno da se sagledava, ali ako to ne uradite, vi ćete izgubiti vrlo veliki deo teritorije. Pošto se bavimo, odnosno pošto operatori u svojim rukama imaju podatke o korisnicima, onda tu se otvaraju raznorazna pitanja etičke prirode. Da li će se zloupotrebiti neki od tih podataka? Da li na sistemskom nivou ili od nekog od zaposlenih? Način na koji se koristi veštačka inteligencija i tako dalje, i tako dalje. Još jedan segment, pa polako završavam, to je nedostatak eksperata i inženjera. To je jedan vrlo veliki i ozbiljan problem. Iz prostog razloga, svi mi volimo da imamo što jeftiniji servis, operatori su već više puta radili, to se zove cost reduction, prvo oko svetske ekonomske krize, pa oko korone, pa non-stop, ali više ne možete da, smanjujete troškove. Često ti troškovi se smanjuju na uštrb plata zaposlenih i onda dođemo do situacije da više nije atraktivno da mladi ljudi rade kod mobilnih operatora, već idu u IT sektor gde su...
Da studiraju telekomunikacije.
Ni da studiraju. Šta je problem? Taj deo je u stvari ključan, jer ako želite stabilnost u svakoj zemlji, država je ta koja mora da favorizuje i da podstakne obrazovanje kadrova koji će raditi kod mobilnih operatora, jer operatore, naročito kad imamo povećanu kompleksnost, nove izazove, tehnologiju koja se vrlo brzo menja. Gledajte, svi mi ovde znamo da novi standard u mobilnoj tehnologiji dolazi na svaki 9 meseci. Da, mi s vremena na vreme to nazovemo 4G, 5G, 6G, ali mi novi standard de facto imamo svaki 9 meseci. Dakle, to zahteva vrlo ozbiljnu i kvalifikovanu radnu snagu. Obuka kadrova, makar na onom osnovnom nivou, nije u nadležnosti operatora, tu mora država da se pozabavi. Ako se ne pozabavi, može i tako. Imamo mi iskustva i sa tog aspekta. Tu ćete dobiti radnu snagu koju ćete uvoziti i plaćati 10 ili 20 puta više. I nikad nećete znati šta ste dobili tačno kao krajnji kvalitet. I tu je potrebno razviti simbiozu između države i operatora u smislu obrazovanja potrebnog dovoljnog visoko kvalitetnog stručnog kadra. Naravno, na operatorima je i da se potrude da se povećaju prvenstveno plate, drugi benefiti zaposlenima i Vodafone i Deutsche Telekom, oni imaju čak i dokumente koje su napisali u kojima se strategijski stavlja kao cilj povećanje plata i benefita svojim inženjerima. S druge strane, oni predviđaju da će potpuno da ugase korisnički deo, da će to sve da pređe na botove, ali inženjeri im trebaju, to botovi dugo još neće moći da rade. I još jedan od izazova koji je takođe tu otvoren, to je pravljenje koridora za autonomna vozila, da bi vozila mogla, dakle, nesmetano da prelaze granice. To je potrebno, to je u stvari sad izazov i na strane države regulatora, koji treba da ugovara, ispregovara te međugranične uslove, ali i operatora koji treba da testiraju mreže, da ta autonomna vozila glatko prelaze bez zadržavanja i u tim pograničnim područjima. I na kraju, 5G je sjajna tehnologija. Ide nam i 6G, bit će još bolje. Ono što imamo problem, što druga industrija kasni. Dakle, ovo je sjajno. Ja i dalje verujem, lepo će biti autonomna vozila, dakle, dovezu vas ispred vašeg posla, pa onda odu da se parkiraju. Dakle, sjajno je. Ali ćemo morati malo da sačekamo. Ono što je činjenica, telekomunikacioni sektor je spreman, ali moramo da sačekamo i ove druge industrije da nam se pridruže u tom pravcu. Hvala.
Možete sjesti, imamo par minuta, pa možemo i prodiskutovati oko ove prezentacije. Zahvaljujem profesoru Neškoviću.
Vi ste se dotakli mnogih tema koje su meni interesantne, recimo ovaj GDPR, spada da zapravo nije nikakva suštinska zaštita. Svi ćemo da kliknemo i da kažemo u redu, prvi put kad dođemo u kontakt s nečim. A s druge strane, ovo što ste istakli, telekomunikacioni provajderi to ili ne mogu i dalje da koriste ili ne koriste zbog nekih razloga koji nije možda tako jednostavno. Možda, ne znam, u ugovoru treba neko da se saglasi. I drugi je ovaj problem koji ste napisali, niste ga pomenuli, ovaj net neutrality. Ni to nije jednostavno. Znači, provajderi daju infrastrukturu, a na neki način ponašaju se kao da je to neka lebegova slama koju...
Pa evo, da se dotaknemo ovog drugog dela, recimo net neutrality, vi tu suštinski imate alate. Operator bi mogao sada da utiče na kvalitet pojedinih servisa ili da zabranjuje neki servise, dakle, međutim, naravno, to je zabranjeno u krajnjoj liniji. Imate činjenicu da digitalne platforme zarađuju praktično na infrastrukturi koja nije njihova. Ono što je činjenica, veliki operatori, to je problem sad malih operatora, veliki operatori, oni su izašli pred Google i Amazon rekli, vi morate nama nešto da plaćate, zato što mi vama činimo uslugu. I vi imate danas da Google plaća nemala sredstva Deutsche Telekomu, zato što je Deutsche Telekom veliki i drži trećinu planete sa svim svojim mrežama. Ali imate i drugu priču sad, među nama. Dok Carl Slim nije preuzeo, recimo, Telekom Austrija grupe, Telekom Austrija nije bila mala grupacija operatora, oni videći šta je uradio Deutsche Telekom, oni su otrčali i zakucali na ista vrata. I oni su se nasmijali. Dakle, hoću da vam kažem da je to jedan ozbiljan problem. Dakle, mali operator koji se obično nalazi na našim prostorima ako nije u sklopu nekog velikog sistema, praktično ne može da dobije nikakvu nagradu, zato što njima dopunski otežava poslovanje u celoj priči. I to je jedan veliki problem koji je u nekim ranijim predviđanjima, dok su prihodi u mobilnim operatorima bili pristojniji nego danas, vodilo ka tome da se izvrši globalna podela sveta, tako da ostanu 2 ili 3 mobilna operatora koja bi delila praktično celu planetu, jer jednostavno, manji operator ne može da se izbori sa tim velikim tako lako. To je ono priča kad Deutsche Telekom ode da pregovara sa Samsungom o modelima mobilnih telefona, on dobije znatno nižu cenu, recimo, nego kompanija u Crnoj Gori. To je taj problem. Kad pričamo o GDPR-u, mobilni operatori su krenuli dosta ranije sa pružanjem svojih servisa i od tog vremena su ostali zakoni koji njima zabranjuju korišćenje personalnih podataka. Međutim, vreme je pretrčalo. Digitalne platforme su se svojom silinom, dakle, nametnule. Proces koji vi ne vidite, ja sam ga malo analizirao, dakle, direktno i u komunikaciji, ja i nešto sam teo da razvijam, pa sam onda se spustio na niži nivo. Vi, da biste koristili neki servis, instalirate aplikaciju, i da biste vi koristili tu aplikaciju, on vas tira da kliknete da se slažete sa uslovima. Ko je od vas pročitao to? Niko. Vi u tim uslovima neretko dajete pravo da ta kompanija vaše personalne podatke koristi za marketing, a imate onda i zakone koji dozvoljavaju da te kompanije prodaju te podatke. Da, vi ste to dali jednoj kompaniji, ali ona, zato što ste to kliknuli, može da proda drugoj. I tu onda vi dođete, ja lično sam probao zbog razvoja nekog servisa, gledajte, personalne podatke do određenog nivoa kupujete za evro ili 2. S druge strane, mobilnim operatorima vi ne date tu mogućnost da i oni stave da se negde klikne i da, recimo, mobilni operator da jeftiniju cenu korišćenja mreže, ako bi taj korisnik, primjera radi, prihvatao neke marketinške kampanje i tako dalje i tako dalje. Tu je sad pitanje što mobilni operatori verovatno treba da iniciraju kod svojih država i svojih vlada zahteve da im se dozvoli uz saglasnost korisnika, dakle, uz ekskluzivnu i isključivu saglasnost korisnika, da i oni mogu da koriste određen set tih personalizovanih podataka. Što mislim da je dobro i za same države, jer onda i država ima prihod i onda pare ostaju ovde i onda na nekom dugoročnom nivou mala država ne postaje siromašnija. Igrom slučaja i nas su gurnuli da se bavimo tim, jer svojevremeno ni u Srbiji pa ni u Crnoj Gori nije bilo stručnjaka iz tog domena, pa su i nas naterali da učimo. Lično ja sam vodio merenje prve bazne stanice u Crnoj Gori sa stanovišta zračenja, primjera radi. To je jedna večita tema. Realna situacija, kad pričamo o zračenju, ja razumem potpune probleme koje operatori imaju. Ona se bazira na tome što je često osnovni uzrok početka priče o zračenju nešto drugo. Dakle, nije to zračenje, jer ako realno naučno pogledamo realnu situaciju, vi imate da vaš mobilni terminal doprinosi ukupnoj dozi zračenja koju prima pojedinačni korisnik negde oko 97%. Dakle, 97% dnevne doze zračenja dobijate od mobilnog terminala zato što ga držite kraj glave. Bazna stanica je uvek na nekom udaljenju od samog korisnika. Jeste li čuli i videli da se prave masovni pokreti za uništavanje mobilnih terminala? Ne. Obično su te kampanje usmerene prema baznim stanicama. I to je de facto svuda na svijetu tako. Imali ste, dakle, paljenje, rušenje u Engleskoj, dakle, direktno baznih stanica, pa imali ste i u Podgorici onu priču sa vrapcima čuvenu koja je obišla celu planetu, jer vrapci su postradali od štetnih zračenja. Ono što je činjenica, dakle, vi sad da odete na Svjetsku zdravstvenu organizaciju, tamo ima jasno iskazan stav koji decidirano kaže da sva zračenja koja su ispod nekih ICNIRP normi da za njih nema evidencije da utiču negativno na zdravlje. Kako stvari stoje? Kad se prave mobilni telefoni, ne znam da li to znate, mobilni telefon bolje radi što je veća snaga predajnika. Mislim, jednostavno. I onda se mobilni odnosno proizvođači mobilnih telefona trude da naprave što je moguće veću snagu samog predajnika u mobilnom terminalu, a da ne priđu granicu. Tu koja je po ICNIRP-u. Tako da svi telefoni manje više, razlike su 10, 20, 30%, ne više, u snazi terminala koji je dominantni izvor zračenja. Osim kad Apple pređe tu granicu, što su u Francuskoj otkrili, jel, nije lako ni otkriti kad se prelazi ta granica. Elem, kod baznih stanica vi tu imate značajno veću kontrolu države. Razlozi su često, mogu da vam nabrajam, dakle, moja laboratorija je merila preko 1000 baznih stanica u praksi. Najčešći razlog za podizanje priče o zračenju je to zato što komšija uzima pare, a ne ja. Pa pošto to ne može da se stavi kao primedba, onda zrači mene. Jeste. Dakle, imali smo, dakle, u Crnoj Gori prva bazna stanica koja je merena je bila kod benzinske pumpe u Tivtu. Dakle, tu je, pored naše ekipe, došlo još 50 ljudi, što od regulatora, direktora, mobilnih operatora i tako dalje. A razlog je bio, dete nije htelo da uči. Dakle, u opštini Vračar u Beogradu žena se goji od toga. Trećem je Tesla rekao da je opasno, i tako dalje, i tako dalje. Ali zračenje, kada je u ovim kontrolisanim granicama, a ono je po pravilu uvek, dakle, vi nemate realan problem. Analizirajući rešenja u svetu, jer u nekim zemljama nemate tako velikih pokreta, vi vidite da, recimo, Francuzi imaju jedno jako dobro rešenje, a to podrazumeva da su napravili sajt i na sajt kače sve podatke. Dakle, urade se merenja štetnih zračenja, oni stave ta merenja na sajt. I kad je korisnicima to na izvolte, taj balon i ta priča o štetnim zračenjima drastično padne dole. Ono što je takođe evidentno, pa ne bi sad da širim suviše, uzeh vreme, to je da ima puno efekata od mobilnih terminala koji realno utiču na zdravlje, ali nisu neionizujuće zračenje. Dakle, vi imate, dakle, studije koje ukazuju probleme sa očima. Dakle, kad u mraku, što je tipično karakteristično za mlađu populaciju, dakle, sa jakim kontrastom, dakle, u pola noći gledaju u onaj ekran non stop, tu ima problema, ali o tome se ne priča. Drugi problem koji je još izraženiji, to su društvene mreže, jer vama više roditelji ne vaspitavaju dete, nego vaspitavaju društvene mreže. To su mnogo ozbiljni problemi nego zračenja. Kod zračenja je nesretan termin. Kao što je veštačka inteligencija sretan termin, jel? Mašinsko učenje nije nešto, a veštačka inteligencija je super, razlika je gotovo nikakva. Ovde imate zračenje, čim kažete zračenje, mislite na rentgensko zračenje, nuklearno zračenje, a kad bi se koristio termin emisija, što je možda primerenije, to bi odmah splaslo dole.
Emisija zračenja.
To je, da.
Imam samo jedno pitanje, možda ne za vas, nego možda i za naše goste iz Slovenije. Ja mislim da znam situaciju na ETF-u u Beogradu, da je i pad interesovanja za telekomunikacije očigledan. Kod nas je isto tako, najmanje, ja mislim, studenta od svih smjerova. Kako je u Sloveniji stanje sa time, vezano za školovanje kadrova? Ko god zna.
Što se tiče kadrova Slovenije, ima i kod nas pad. Možda je Janez bolji da odgovori, on je bio dugo godina u akademskoj sferi, ali interesantno, studija lagano pada. Znači, i u Sloveniji imamo problem s kadrovima. Generalno u Sloveniji, što se tiče tehničkog kadra, generalno je deficit. Trude se u ministarstvama na tome da bi to malo pokrenilo, ali teško. Stvarno, što ste vi kazali da će biti manjko inženjera, to će biti, ja mislim, jednih bitnih problema. sigurno.
Zahvaljujem. Možda još jedno pitanje, izvolite Milo.
Pomenuli ste da proizvođači iz Kine imaju ogroman broj baznih stanica koje su izvršili njihovo postavljanje u njihovoj državi, ali postoji i u drugim državama Evrope i svijeta. Međutim, znate i sami da Evropa pokušava sa 5G toolboxom da ograniči korišćenje proizvoda proizvođača iz Azije, a vidjeli smo i sami ogroman je potencijal u telefonima koje vi koristite, koji opet mogu sa sobom nositi određene vrste, ajde da kažemo, zloupotrebe podataka i ostalo, jer nikad ne znate koja od aplikacija će gdje da pošalje vaše podatke. Sad kad pogledamo jednu i drugu stranu, koliko je sad, da kažemo, pravedno sa stanovišta tehničkog i održavanja i poboljšanja kvaliteta baznih stanica i cijena koje oni nude, sprečavati njihovo implementiranje na teritorijama Evrope ili Amerike u odnosu na proizvođače koji su baš iz Evrope.
Pa, objektivno gledano, tu doćemo sad do političke zabrane, suštinski, koja je razumljiva svima nama zašto se radi. Međutim, ta politička zabrana nosi sa sobom uvek jednu opasnost. Jer ako ne koristite nešto što je vrlo kvalitetno, a po nižoj ceni, suštinski vi dajete tim proizvođačima, kineskim proizvođačima, vetar u leđa da će taj jaz da bude sve veći između onoga što mi koristimo i oni što koriste. Vi ste potpuno u pravu da zabranjujemo u Evropi korišćenje naročito u core delu kineske opreme. Ostaje problem terminala sa kojima ne može tako lako da se izađe na kraj. Suštinski, Evropa i nema svoju proizvodnju mobilnih terminala. Ili su američki, ili su južnokorejski. Čipovi, opet i ovi što idu u južnokorejske terminale, su američki, dakle Qualcommovi. Čak imate interesantnu situaciju da Apple i Qualcomm su dva najveća takmaca, koje kriju svoje patente, rješenja i tako dalje. Ne znam da li znate da i jedni i drugi prave čipeve na istoj mašini. Prepodne radi Apple, popodne radi Qualcomm. Toliko sad o situaciji u svetu. I ono što ja znam, pošto smo sa nekim većim kompanijama konkurisali, pa sad čekamo rezultate tih projekata evropskog tipa, Evropa je pokrenula čitavu seriju projekata za razvoj aplikacija i sistema za otkrivanje malverzacija u opremi i u softveru koja je otvorenog tipa, recimo. Jer vi danas, generalni koncept i u Evropskoj uniji, svud na planeti, imate korišćenje gotovih uređaja, jedna priča, a drugo je da koristite za razvoj open source rješenja. Pri čemu su sistemi toliko složeni da retko ko zna šta je u tim rješenjima unutra. I sad se traže načini kako da sa alatima s polja vi utvrdite da li ima nekog neželjenog prenosa informacija, nekakvih virusa i tako dalje. Daću još jedan primjer koji možda oslikava kompleksnost cijele te priče. Nije vezano za Kineze, ali je manje više ista priča. Vi kad otkucate, ne znam, www.youtube.com, hoćete da pogledate film, koliko to ima slova? 20-ak? I znate koliko sa vašeg računara količina podataka ode prema YouTube? 18 kilobajta. Dakle, zašto 18 kilobajta? Dakle, vi apsolutno ne znate šta je unutra. Da li tu ide deo vašeg nekog korisničkog saobraćaja? Čak smo se mi u nekoj fazi, mi imamo tih studenta i klinaca zaista sjajnih, pa smo, reverzno inženjerstvo radili malo sa jednom od tih platformi i sad je on analizirao, otvarao to i u jednom trenutku je naišao na poruku koja kaže, ako ste stigli do ovde, okrenite nas, nudimo vam posao. Dakle, čak u to što kreće sa vašeg računara i to piše. Tako da je to vrlo komplikovan, težak problem i prevazilazi naše lokalne okvire, svakako, ali Evropa se trudi sada da nađe nekakve alate da to suzbije. Nisam siguran da će baš da to uspe tako lako.
Još jednom, još jednom zahvaljujem profesoru Neškoviću na predavanju i na detaljnim odgovorima. I ja predlažem that we go to lecture 3, and this lecture will be delivered by Dr. Janez Sterle from Internet Institute from Slovenia about bridging theory and practice in private 5G in port environments.
Puno vam hvala za ovu priliku. Stvarno mi je lijepo u Crnoj Gori. A sad ću da switchnem na engleski, zato što bit će brže. So, I'm really happy to be here. So, my name is Janez Sterle. I'm coming from Internet Institute, which is an SME based in Ljubljana in Slovenia. So, my talk is about bringing the theory into the practice. So, I hope at the end I will try to bridge, what is the state of the art in the development, in the theory, and what is the state of the art which is actually expected by the industry on other side. So my first question is, do you maybe know what is more expensive to buy? 1,000 latest Samsung phones, or to build brand new 5G network with the core network, which is in the redundant mode, 6 base stations, each base station is macro base station with 3 sectors, let's say, with synchronization and everything. What do you think?
Probably this consumer mobile phones.
Yeah, it really depends actually which provider, of course, you buy. If this is a tier 1, you can know this NEH provider, or you go with, let's say, the entry providers. So basically, yeah, it could be that, the phones are actually more expensive than actually your network. And now you need to think of that commercial phones, which are commercial off the shelf, you can buy, in the store, are probably cheaper than the industrial devices. So basically, one of the problem why maybe we are lacking the 5G deployment is not on the network side, but basically it's on the UE side. So UEs are actually too expensive for the industry. So now I'm pretty much sure you heard that new functionalities are coming, like RedCap or enhanced RedCap. So basically the idea is to get LTE capabilities to 5G, but of course this RedCap modem, which is 5G modem working in standalone, it is much cheaper. But now I have another question for you. What is the price if you go, let's say, to the store, let's say you're doing your development, and you would like to buy a Qualcomm chipset, let's say, on Sierra Wireless, GSM, versus 4G versus 5G? What is the price-wise? Just the chipset. The GSM model costs, it's approximately €1. But the premium 5G modem costs €300. Basically, this is the difference and actually the problem currently. But let's not that I give you too much questions. I would like first to give my presentation. So I believe, I hope that I will bridge the gap between this state of the art in the theory and state of the art actually in practice. But I also believe that we have a lot of, let's say, common ground between Montenegro and Slovenia. In Europe, more than 50% of GDP is produced by SMEs. More than 65% of, let's say, all the people which are employed are actually employed by SMEs. But now we are actually expecting that the industry will drive that kind of implementations like 5G. In reality, it is vice versa, believe me. So I believe, and I will show you on the slide with the statistics, the main driver currently, or user of this 5G standalone or 5G private networks is actually the industry. And the second one is the academy. So I believe you have important role. I don't know how strong is the industry here, but for sure I see that the academy is strong. So based on the statistic worldwide, you have a huge obligation. And you will be the one who can push this, let's say, to come to the reality, to come to the field, and so on. So basically, this is another message. I don't want to promote my company or what I'm doing, but we are an SME. We are a spin-out from the University of Ljubljana. I was working for the university for 15 years. So basically, after 15 years, we moved to our startup. We bought the IPR, and I moved part of the team also, let's say, to the company. So basically now, for the last 5 years, we started in 2017 to develop 5G solutions. So now what we have is our own 5G, but we are an SME in Slovenia, a small company. So basically, you can also build your own 5G if you want. Now you can buy on the market the components. If you have the knowledge, build it on your own. For the academy, for the testing, for the, let's say, promotion of the technology, to build new use cases, you can do it like that. Don't wait for the big vendors. Don't wait for this. So for sure, my message is, if we can do it, you can do it. Believe me. Believe me. But of course, you need to build a partnership ecosystem. I think this is the strongest point which we have in Slovenia, and this is also the strongest point you have it in Montenegro. What I want to say, Slovenia is small, everybody knows each other, which means I can pick a phone and I can call a CTO of Telekom Slovenia, I can call to the regulator, I know the people, which means that we are really fast and we can gather together and build a consortium and be, let's say, competitive to the Europe. Deutsche Telekom cannot do that so fast as we can do it. So if you're small and there we are, you know more each other, which means you can do it even faster as we do it. But of course, you need to, let's say, connect this ecosystem with, let's say, international ecosystem. This is how we actually learn. This is how we are actually getting our edge. And this is how, at the end, actually, we are driving some of the European development. I will just give you an example. I believe that we are one of the first in Europe. For sure, we were one of the first in Europe. We were deploying with our 5G system, private 5G system, the private network in the port, which was one of the first in Europe. And now we have extended our solution and connected to the AI. So basically, our AI agent is the best engineer which we have in our house. So we had this issue, we discussed, that the problem is, let's say, in the students, we don't have enough students. This is the reality, but not just, let's say, in Slovenia, not just in Serbia, not just in Montenegro, but also in Europe. But I would show you, but it's not time, maybe next time, how, let's say, strong this, integration between your infrastructure and with that kind of knowledge, like generative AI and LLM can bring. And of course, if you give additional information to it, like real-time information, let's say, from the base station, real-time information from the UE side, then you give the knowledge, which is like your proprietary code, which you have developed. You give, let's say, to the model, the knowledge of how you configure this stuff. You would be amazed what can come out of this, But maybe later I will have the opportunity. So for sure, this is one of the messages. If we can do it, you can also do it, believe me. So for the last 8 years, we finished more than 5 development projects in Europe. But our idea was not just to be part of the project, but to have the real products. And one of the products for sure is this tactical 5G solution which we have built. Now we have it deployed, let's say, of course, for the test purposes. This is another discussion. We have it deployed at critical infrastructure, and now we have started development for the military also. So before we go deep down to the technology, I would like to give a political statement. So EU has set an ambitious target, let's say, for the digitalization, let's say for this decade. How or which technologies are the ones which will drive the European productivity growth, sustainability, and quality of life? Why I'm putting this? This is a Bible or 10 commandments for every politician that should know. These are the technologies you should know. This is one message. Another message is that you see it here, it's not wireless connectivity, like it should be like, we could say generative AI or something like that. But in the case of the connectivity, we are talking about the exact technology. It is a 5G. Between this, let's say, acronym, it is a standard, which is tangible and so on. So basically, this is the difference, let's say, between other technologies, which could be anything. You know, I don't know which technology should I use to build a digital twin. But in the case of wireless connectivity, there is explicit 5G. This is the important message. So, but I don't want just to be, let's say, on theoretical side. Now I would like to give you my first demonstration. What is the power if you connect these technologies together? So basically, if we are connecting the IoT part with the sensors, with far-edge computing, with 5G gateways, with 5G mobile network, with cloud-based technologies, with management, and at the end with the agentic AI. So basically on the left side, you can actually see our deployment, which we have in municipality of Velenje. This is one of the cities in Slovenia. In our country, joint country, we call it Titovo Velenje, if you remember. So basically, we have 15 deployments of that kind of setups, and each setup has a 5G gateway connected to a 5G network, of course, with sensors and for the environment monitoring, with cameras to monitor the traffic and so on. So basically, we connect this infrastructure, let's say, to our agentic AI agent. So I asked the agent, let me start at the beginning. Based on the natural language, my natural language, to generate a report. So I told it that it should check, you know, in Velenje municipality, I didn't tell which gateways, to check our infrastructure which is there. So basically, what the agent will do, it will actually check, let's say, what are the agents which are available to him. Then it will connect to all the agents on the field through the 5G network in real time and gather the location information. Then it will map this location information to Velenje municipality, whatever it is for this LLM. And at the end, it will give me, let's say, a detailed diagnostics. So basically, it will be too long to wait, but this is, let's say, how it connects, let's say, in real time. This is what I did yesterday from my hotel. It connects in real time, let's say, to all these agents, do this, let's say, fetching the information. Of course, it fetched the information, and at the end, it will build a detailed report. So this was like in 6 minutes. Which of the engineer you think in our office can do that kind of, let's say, connect in real time, gather the information, prepare that kind of, let's say, detailed report, let's say, in 6 minutes? None of them. Okay. So basically, I believe, you know, in previous slides, we were talking about the digitalization. The next decade, it will be about intelligent systems. So from digitalization, we are coming to automation, but there is a big difference between automation systems and intelligent systems. In the case of automation, if you are coming, let's say, to a point which was not foreseen before, what happens? The system will stop, typically, or will crash. But in the case of intelligent system, it can actually adapt. That's the main message. And I'm pretty much sure in next decade, this will be the next main message, let's say. So I was talking about the ecosystem in Slovenia, an ecosystem which you can build here in Montenegro. So the European Commission, when it is preparing, let's say, that kind of political statement, always the money is behind that political statement. So in the case of 5G development, 1.8 billion euros are available for the development. And these, let's say, euros are also available to you. So European Commission prepared, let's say, an ecosystem which is how built. 50% of the vote is coming from the EU, but another 50% is coming from the industry. So basically, you can, if you are part of this, you can actually influence how this money will be used, for what kind of project and so on. So basically in Slovenia, this is how we actually started. This is how we had the opportunity basically to deploy one of the first private 5G networks in the port. This is why we are able to do that kind of, let's say, really, really advanced stuff. So I encourage you that you're actually using this. And another message is, there are technologies which are new technologies, but then it is a wireless IMT technology, which is like, it is going far back. Let's say, we know when we started with NMT, GSM, and so on. I will not go with these details, but I will just give you the important message. We started with the mobility. The next step, it was actually internet in the pocket, which we actually got with because of the Apple. They were the first one who knew how to use, let's say, these capabilities which are available. But what we got with the 5G, so in 4G, we actually got the first global mobile standard. Before that, what that means, if you go to China or if you go to the States, you needed to change the phone, physically change the phone. Probably everybody forgot, but the standardization worldwide, it was not like synchronized. With 4G, we got to there, but with 5G, what we got is industrial standard. This is the important. So why is this important? Because we have the common, let's say, the development, standardization, and at the end we can get the economy of scale, which is really important to have the devices which are not very expensive and so on. So basically, yeah, it is about the digital transformation, but I believe the next decade will be about intelligent systems. This could be mobile system, this could be IoT system, this could be health system or whatsoever. It is about that. Another point why this, let's say, ecosystem is important is this. You remember Tetra? It is still used. You remember DMR or GSMR? So these are, let's say, the technologies where we rely our lives upon them. If you call, let's say, 2112, the firefighter or whoever will come, let's say, to help you, he's actually talking with the technology from 95. Okay? So basically, of course, the 5G is not just the industrial standard, it's actually the standard also for the PPDR, which is global one. Now it is also standard for the 5G SATCOM, for the satellite. So in Slovenia, we are able to use Starlink. What do you think, what's the price if I buy a Starlink connectivity compared to the optical connectivity? It is almost the same. It is almost, this is how, let's say, affordable it is. The only problem is that I need to buy a dedicated, let's say, modem gateway, which is coming from the Starlink in this case. But now with the 5G, the idea is that you will use the same terminal as you have it in the pocket now, and you will be able to connect to the satellite. So basically, the satellite network will be a base station, which you will be able to connect. And based on the Starlink and the pricing model, which is now, let's say, in place, it will be affordable, and it is affordable already. So for sure, we saw a lot of bubbles about the coverage. I don't see a problem for these rural areas. It is easy to deploy, let's say, a Starlink. Could be used only for the backhaul. Then you deploy, I don't know, private 5G, and you can do the coverage there. This is really affordable, for sure. So, and another step, which is really important, is that we are not talking about the Starlink, but that we are talking about the sovereignty. So basically in Europe, we are developing this IRIS² satellite constellation, which is a direct response, let's say, to these challenges which we have with the Starlink. So, but this will be deployed, let's say, at the end, at around, believe the first satellites will be up around 2030. And of course, the interface will be 5G. This is another important message. And the last message is now also in the NATO, in the MILCOM, 5G is becoming the standard. The first TANAG was out to be used in the military. Why is this important? We had a lot of great discussion about what is the problem in the ecosystem. We are now really relying on the mobile operators that they will do the miracle to push the deployment, to push the technologies and so on. It is important, as we saw it in the 5G, that we are attracting, let's say, in this ecosystem, different verticals. If we would compare the telecommunications sector to automotive 5 years ago, which one was more important in Europe? What do you think? It was automotive, of course. So basically, it is important that we attract that kind of ecosystems, because this is how we will be able to develop, this is how we will be able to grow, to deploy stuff, and so on. So, and of course, because of this political situation which we have now, it is important that we are also attracting, let's say, the ecosystems like military, that they will actually invest in the future development and so on. So the idea of 5G is have a unified community, let's say, connectivity fabric. In practice, what that means, in reality, is Qualcomm develops one chip, and this chip is used in mobile phone, smartphone, could be used in tablet, could be used in industrial terminal, could be used, let's say, industrial gateway, and so on. And this is the reality, how the ecosystem actually works now. You buy one modem and you can deploy it, let's say, or use it for different stuff. And this is really important that we have this unified connectivity. That's why, I placed you a lot of these acronyms like non-terrestrial network, side link, or direct terminal-to-terminal communications, car-to-car communications, Ethernet, Profinet, SCADA. These are, let's say, industrial standards which actually needs to be, let's say, supported in that kind of ecosystem to be used. So, based on our experience, we had the first deployment of our private 5G in 2020. In 2021 was the first deployment which we did, let's say, in our industrial environment, and that was in the port. So what are the challenges? So for sure, today we had a lot of discussion. Should I use a private network or should I use a dedicated network which I build on my own? So it actually really depends based on the services you need. It is not just that, but also the regulatory stuff. If you are, let's say, a critical infrastructure, maybe, at least in Slovenia it's like that information in critical infrastructure shouldn't pass from the physical area of that critical infrastructure to Ljubljana, where the core network is, and vice versa. This is just the demand they have, which means that it is hard to use plain, let's say, mobile network from commercial mobile network because of the regulation and so on. Another really important challenge is actually the technology availability and maturity. If you remember, we had this discussion from innovation to 3GP specification, and from 3GP specification to the chipset, then the chip you need to, let's say, integrate into the phone and so on and so on. You can imagine how complex it is. This is like from 6 to 18 months. So the problem is that in this ecosystem, we are building a hype, which is, let's say, we have a hype, and then we sell this hype to the industry, but the industry want to buy this hype at the end, like, I don't know, Red Cap now, and these tier one vendors say, oh, we are not ready yet. And this is a problem, for sure, I believe, for that kind of deployments. So we talked about the initial investments. For sure, if we're talking about the commercial network, the investments are high. The problem of current, let's say, 5G deployment in the commercial network is that it is like 5G network 0.0, I would say. Why? Because it actually relates to LTE. You cannot build 5G network in commercial. Currently, nobody does it like that. First, you need to have an LTE, then you have a 5G. So the intelligence, the control plane of the current 5G in the commercial networks is actually LTE. And there's a problem, which means that fancy functionalities like ultra-reliable, low latency, massive machine type stuff, forget about this. Without, let's say, dedicated core, you cannot go this way. But for sure, another problem is about the UE cost, as I told you. The ecosystem is built, of course, that when you develop the chipset, who is buying this chipset? Tier one, let's say, providers of the phones, which means they are the first one to buy. The guys who are doing the industrial devices will get that kind of advanced chipset, let's say, maybe in 1 or maybe 2 years. So, and so on. At the end, when you're building the use cases and when you detect what are the requirements for the bandwidth, for the throughput, of course, you need to get the spectrum and bandwidth. So this is another really important message for the regulation or for the governmental audience. If you will give, let's say, to the, let's say, ecosystem, to the, could be, but not just to the industry, a spectrum, like we are able to get it in Slovenia, not to be used, let's say, for the public services, but for the private services, you will start to get that kind of private network deployments. So basically, in our case in Slovenia, the driver was not, let's say, the telco, but actually the SMEs, actually the industry was the driver. But we had the ecosystem which was supported by ACOS. This is really important. So for sure, in your case, do it the same as they did it. Give the frequencies, give the spectrum, additional spectrum, also for the industry, which is dedicated to the industry. So basically, mobile operators are not allowed to buy it. This is important message. Otherwise, they will buy everything because they have the money. Okay. Okay, I talk about these technologies. Another challenge I see is who can actually build your private network. What do you think? Of course, you will say first the mobile operators, but do you really believe they can build it for you? So if you're industry, who knows your business? Typically the system integrators. So currently, even in Slovenia, this is, let's say, the gap. You have, let's say, the system integrators who understands the industry. They know what is the problem in the industry. What are, I don't know, the challenges and everything. But they are lacking the capabilities of the wireless technologies. They don't know shit about 5G. Sorry for this word. On other side, you have a mobile operators which are doing the business as they know it. They are doing these subscriptions, selling to residentials, maybe to IT. But the problem is that they don't know the business. And now you need to bridge the gap. And this you cannot do it like in that kind of conference, like, oh, now we will bridge the gap. So it needs to be, let's say, you need to have time. So you need to start to collaborate together. You need to start, let's say, to transfer the knowledge from the industry to the mobile operators and vice versa. But I believe that also there is a lot of opportunities for the academy and also for SMEs which would like to choose, I don't know, could be a spin out from the mobile operator to go in this direction. Okay. I will be too long if I don't move fast. So this is the statistics which is really important and the message which you should take. The first, let's say, this is the statistic about the deployment of the private 5G networks worldwide. You can see it here that basically in the case of 5G, we are actually at the beginning. Only 29% of the actual private networks is actually in the 5G. Another message is maybe for you. I don't know how strong is the manufacturing industry, but you see it here, the statistics. The second on the line are actually academic research networks. So this is a message for you.
But also, I'm just noticing here, they are talking about tourism, but tourism may be covered by maritime and airports, but there is no, how say, separate line with the...
Yes. But this is the message for the academy. You are the one who should push it. Start pushing it. If you will not push it, based on the worldwide statistics, you should do it. It's about you, as we did it, let's say, in Slovenia. Okay, I will not go to the details actually, what is actually private network. So I believe, but maybe for further discussion, it should be something which is dedicated, mobile network, of course, but it should be built for business, could be built for the industry, could be built for the communities, for the hospital, and so on. So the next line is important. Independent of public networks. But this is like, should be, maybe, must be, you know. We will see it later. In Slovenia, we actually have two models. One model is if you're a critical infrastructure or you have, let's say, regulatory, let's say, obligations, and you have the teams who are capable, let's say, to learn, to adapt to this technology, to integrate this technology to, let's say, industry ecosystem, you build this in the private way. If this is not your, let's say, really core, one of the core technologies which you need to have under your control, there is option that you go, let's say, to some combination, which we call it hybrid combination, when part of the network is built, let's say, dedicated for you, like a core network, another part you rent. This is really interesting business-wise model. You rent it, let's say, from the mobile operators, the RAN part. So the RAN part is deployed by the mobile operators, but the core network is actually at your premises, if you can imagine. So why is this okay? Or why is this interesting? It is because of the money. The mobile operators, because how ecosystem is built and how the value chain goes, always get the base station cheaper than if you are buying it for yourself. That's the reason. The base station actually can be cheaper. But yeah, it's all about who will own it. So can I change even so if I don't know, you have a management of your network, you don't have a team, and you outsource it to system integrator. But still you own it, which means if system integrator is not doing your work, you can change it, the system integrator. Otherwise, you rely, let's say, to public network. It is about the coverage. In the case of private, it is typically local. If it is national, of course, if it is public, it is national coverage and so on. Security is highest, QoS could be higher because you have a dedicated resources. Spectrum is dedicated for you, so you are not sharing the spectrum with other users. This is important message. Especially for the critical infrastructure. Of course, infrastructure and upgrades, it is dedicated, so it is up to you, not up to the mobile operator. I'm pretty much sure you know about these 3GPP releases, which means another advanced functionalities are coming. But typically you can see it on the slides, but you cannot see it, let's say, at the deployment at the mobile operators. And this is the challenge, I would say. If you have this option to get this, let's say, under your control, you could go to the latest release, which is, of course, still stable and so on. And of course, at the end, the pricing model is different. In the case, if you go for public network, you just buy the subscription for the service. In the case for the private network, of course, you have higher initial investment, but there is also maintenance, support cost, and so on. So, but message is private, secure, dedicated, under your control. Public network, it is a public network. You need to build a strong relationship between them. And of course, as I told you before, you can also build a hybrid model. This hybrid model is justified because of the pricing model. Okay?
Sorry,
yes,
interrupting you. What is hybrid here? What is part of how say you are developing locally, and what is part that?
So basically, you deploy a mobile core at your premises, okay, and you rely to the mobile operator that it deploys the RAN part. Then you integrate the RAN part, which is public infrastructure, to the core network, and of course, which in that case, you can still have a dedicated frequencies, but the point is that the operator bought this equipment for itself because they are buying this equipment in volumes, which means the base station cost is much, much lower than could be for you. You know, these tier one producers, they always have these business units different. The strongest business unit is the one which is, let's say, supporting the mobile operators. Then you have a business unit also for the private networks and something else. But even if you go to the private network business unit, typically the price for these guys will be higher than for these guys. Economy of scale.
Just a important thing to ask. You said mobile operator provides radio part.
Yes.
Does this mean that operator can use this radio part for itself, or is dedicated only to the private?
It depends how you, let's say, what kind of agreement you have. Currently, because the mobile operators don't have the private standalone 5G core, it's hard to share it. You know, there is no slicing, there is no this fancy stuff, which means typically, at least in Slovenia, they get a dedicated, let's say, frequency band, which means that this frequency band and the RAN part, the RRU, the BBU, is dedicated to the industry. Nobody else is using it. Okay, this.
So you connect with more mobile operators, like with the different radio networks? or with only one?
This is the model which we were talking about to push for the PPDR. So we saw the status of the ecosystem. Now, also in Slovenia, the DMR and TETRA system are used, let's say, for the public safety. The TETRA by the police, the DMR it is used by the firefighter and, let's say, ambulance service. So basically, this is voice-centric. They could also send some short SMS and the GPS location. But so nothing of advanced services. They are not even to send a picture from the site of accident, if you can imagine. So basically, the idea in Slovenia was to build a PPDR network which is based on 3GPP. Okay, how you can build it really fast. If you would build a dedicated private network, you need to build, let's say, all the sites. You need to deploy the base stations there, which it is expensive and it takes time. So the fastest way, how you do it, you build a dedicated core network which is for the PPDR with the services. And then you connect this stuff with the RAN from all the providers, okay? Which means that you have the coverage from one provider, another provider, the third provider, and this is how you get the resilient system with high availability. You can still build at the end in parallel dedicated base stations. Let's say for the locations which are known for you, you can also do it because you have your own core, it's no problem. But to get fast, with the capacity, the national coverage, you can do it like this. And this could be also for the model, let's say, I don't know, for the transport industry, for, I don't know, for the, not for the railway because they have their own standards now, also in this direction coming. So, but for sure, for that kind of services to get really quick the national coverage, this is the way how to do it. And you can push the resilience, you can push all these, let's say, small details which are really, really important. Regarding the spectrum, this is again, let's say, for the regulatory guys here in the room. In Slovenia, of course, we have this option. If you're a mobile operator, you bid, let's say, for this national coverage, you get the frequencies for the national coverage and obligations. So you need to do the coverage of all the Slovenia and so on, whatever the obligation is, and this will be explained by Andrej. But of course, you can do what? You cannot just stick to this model, which is like 30, 40 years, let's say, which is quite incumbent. You can, let's say, revise it. So how they did it, they offered, let's say, additional frequencies, which, let's say, at the beginning are not able to be bought by the mobile operators, but can be bought only by the vertical industries. Okay? You cannot be mobile operator, but if you're a vertical industry, like a port, like a municipality, like even an SME, if you have money, you can buy per municipality level frequencies. So the frequency band, it is this N40 and another one is N78, but the spectrum is not so huge. But the added value for this N40 spectrum for sure is because they are lower frequencies, you can do a good coverage. You will not get the capacity, but you start to build with the coverage. In the next stage, this is something Andrej also explained, which is coming. The 5G pioneering band for private networks in Europe, this is how I call it. This is N77 band, which is synchronized over the Europe, will be used for the private deployment. So it will not go for the, let's say, municipality level, but it will be like for, Andrej will do the details, but you can just cover a small coverage, couple of meters, and you will get your own frequencies. So basically the message is change your, let's say, environment from the regulation perspective. You know what the mobile operators can do, okay? But you can open this ecosystem also to smaller companies. You saw the worldwide statistics. If you open it, the academics, like and other, let's say, industry will come in, and this will be the push. At the end, we don't know who will, I'm pretty much sure the mobile operators in later stage will take over, but they need the push. Otherwise, they will not do it, if you ask me. And of course, you have also the option for the unlicensed spectrum. Probably you have heard that 5G also, even 4G works on the Wi-Fi band. Okay, but the issue is, this is shared. It is shared by the technologies, could be used by Bluetooth, could be used by, I don't know, Wi-Fi, 5G, this is the problem. And of course, it is shared also between the users. But I will give you an example. in Port of Koper, Luka Koper, they have built their, let's say, operational network on the Wi-Fi. You will see it later in the slides if you will have time. This is like 300 square kilometers of the coverage area, which they need to cover. And they have built, let's say, the Wi-Fi, a lot of Wi-Fi access points. It is more than 100 to just cover, let's say, these main groups which are important for them to do it, let's say, use it for the operational network. But it is a lot of access points. You can do it in reality, but if there is a jamming, what can they, even the regulator can do much. It is a shared spectrum, okay? So for sure, this is an added value, additional added value you should think of, you know, for sure you have a licensed spectrum, but for the industry, for the real application, which are critical, you need to have something dedicated. This is the main message. Okay, so what are the main steps? Start with the use cases. Don't think about the I have a technology, now I need to apply it somewhere, as we did it at the beginning. This was really nice presentation, lesson from Professor Nešković. You know, we had a lot of ideas how to place the technology, how to use the technology. No, start with what is the use case. Why do you need the technology? Then what are the characteristics? In some cases, in the case of the mobile operators, you need more bandwidth in the direction of the users. But in the case of the industry, what do you think? The most important stuff is that you have a throughput uplink. You have a camera which is transmitting some to the cloud. You have a sensor which is transmitting into the cloud, and so on. It is different model. This is another point why you need sometimes to build a private network. Okay. Then, of course, another point, when you know what you will do or what you need to ask yourself about legislation and regulation. As I told you, if you are, I don't know, plain industry, if you are not critical infrastructure, you can go with shared model, or you just can, I don't know, rent a service from the MNO. But if you're critical infrastructure, sometimes there will be obligations. And you need to build a dedicated staff. That doesn't mean that this dedicated network was not built by the MNO. Okay, this is not my message which I want to give, but you need to build it because of the regulation, because of the legislation, and so on. Then you need to go for the radio planning, network planning. After that, you will get the coverage, capacities. You need to think about the redundancy, all this small stuff which the MNOs know really good. And out of that, of course, you need to ask yourself if regulators can give me that kind of spectrum that I need for the use cases. So when you will do the regulation about this, think about, you know, what are the actual needs of the industry? This is really important stuff, and they will actually get what they need. This is the important stuff. But this is not just the frequencies. You need to have the mobile country code, mobile network code. This, again, I believe Andrei will talk a bit about. You don't need to have these public identities. You can have the private ones, okay? So about the network vendor and system integration, we talked about. You can choose it, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. This is the difference about the pricing and also about the longevity of your solution and how, let's say, far-fetched the system needs to work and so on. Don't forget about the UIs, the devices. You need to test them. But, you know, the ecosystem is built that the latest chipset goes to the consumer ones because they have the economy of scale. In later stages, you get that kind of, let's say, chipsets also, let's say, to the industry grade. You need to integrate at the end, you know, the solution with IT and OT systems. This is the important part where the SCADA and all these small other details are coming. So the system is, of course, custom built, which means it is tailored to the needs of, I don't know, academy, tailored to the needs of the industry, of the port, of the hospital, and so on. So this was my main message. Now I have, if we have time, I don't know how much time you give me. I have these nice slides.
How many slides?
A lot. I don't know what happened, but that this resolution is not okay. In my on my laptop works perfectly. So as I told you, we started long time ago with the testing of the private 5G technology, let's say in the most, let's say, important critical infrastructure such as sports, okay? Another one is public safety and so on. But I believe there are a lot of messages or nice information you can get it, let's say, out of here. So basically in 2020, when we started with, but the SME came to the port, not the mobile operator. Don't forget about this. An SME came there and convinced them that this is important for them in 2020. So they decided, they had this vision about digitalization and automation, you know. They had the Wi-Fi network, but they had issues with the Wi-Fi. Of course, Wi-Fi was not built to cover that kind of 300 hectares, let's say, of area with high performance, scalable communication infrastructure. It should have a cloud, it should have AI capabilities, it should be modular, open, scalable. As you saw about this digital agenda of Europe, you know, there are a lot of technologies which you can apply here. And we actually did it at the end. We applied the AI, we applied all this IoT stuff, we apply real-time, let's say, gathering information, but not just from the sensors, like, you know, from the weather sensors or environmental sensors. We are actually connecting to a canvas of these industrial trucks which are used in real time, and we are fetching this information, let's say, to improve operation and so on. You can do it in real time, okay? So in those time, of course, we had also the problem how to place, but this was the slide for the European Commission and for the community, not for the port itself. But I helped them how to place them. So you know about this triangle which is coming from the 5G. So for each of these, let's say, primary services like enhanced mobile broadband, massive machine type communication, ultra reliable, low latency, we had an idea how to test it and how to experiment on top of it. So at the end, we connected the drones to the 5G network, and we took that was in 2020, we took the live stream, let's say, from the drone over the 5G network to the security operations center, let's say that. That was one idea. We were using wearable cameras. We went so far that because this port area, this is really nice to do experimentation, they have the capability to close the airspace on top of it. And they control the airspace. Which means what we did autonomous flight with drones there. What that means that the drone was not controlled by the joystick, but it was able to fly based on trajectory, and it was able to evade, let's say, the obstacle, which was another drone, because of the AI intelligence and so on. So basically, of course, we did a lot of this AI with cameras. We were detecting, reading container markers, checking if there are seals. So basically, the idea was to automate whatever it was the manual stuff. With, of course, not just the 5G. 5G cannot do this without IoT, without additional sensors, without cameras, without artificial intelligence. In those times, machine learning was the guy who do it, but today you saw how powerful actually the LLM is. This is your new engineer, and we are lacking of engineers now. I was talking about telematics metering. What about this remote crane control? What do you think? What happened with that? Basically, they did it, not with our solution, because there are tier 1 providers of the cranes, which are collaborating only with tier 1 producers of the equipment. Okay, it's like that. But this last year, during the summer, we had a trial, which means that the cranes were actually controlled, automated remotely, let's say over the 5G. That was the test. And we were testing how many cranes we could control by, let's say, this 5G deployment there. Okay, I will not give you the name, but yeah, it is possible. But we were not using this fancy, ultra reliable, low latency stuff. It was just enhanced mobile broadband with additional QoS mechanisms and so on and so on. So we built a modular system. In those times, we were testing the option how to build it as a private network or how to build it as a hybrid system to use, let's say, the RAN, which is coming from the, let's say, public network, and dedicated core deployed there. So basically, and of course, we applied a lot of use cases, and the idea was we wanted to prove that based on this concept, we are always able to generate new use cases or to support these new use cases, let's say, to support their internal operation, digitalization, automation, and now we are coming to these intelligent, let's say, systems, which are actually supported in the latest stage what we did, or what is the new direction we are building a digital twin of the port. Okay? So, when you're doing that kind of stuff, at the beginning, for sure, you can build these islands, one use case, another use case, and you test the technology or functionalities. But at the end, for the final industry, it needs to be something which is tangible with added value. And for them, the added value is actually real-time information gathering from the field over that kind of solution, okay? Gathering this telemetry information and do, let's say, informed decision on top of it. And of course, about prosperity. You saw that digital agenda from Europe. This is also applied here, you know. Okay, we were testing really fancy stuff like additional security. This is one of the important stuff, let's say 5G, but this standalone 5G, not what is currently deployed by the mobile operators. It is bringing additional security and trust in that kind of technologies. You are not able anymore to do the IMSI catching, okay, because the IMSI, even at the beginning when you do the attach, it is actually encrypted with the public key of the mobile network. Only the mobile network which has the private key can decrypt it. So basically, we went to that kind of stuff. Another interesting stuff was, you know, cell broadcast. I think you are deploying it in Montenegro, is it? The cell broadcast for the public warning system.
It is in progress, I think.
You can use this also in the private deployments. We did it, you know, it's no problem. The benefit of this if you're using this ecosystem, the terminals are here. They need to be compliant by the European CE, which means a long time ago, every phone which is coming to Europe needs to be compliant with these broadcast functionalities. And this is an example which we actually did. So basically, this is the cell broadcast over the private 5G network, which we did, let's say, in the port, let's say, for that kind of stuff. So basically, you can go, let's say, with also really, really advanced stuff, okay? And apply it, let's say, to this. For sure, another message, you cannot optimize what you cannot measure. Remember that. That's why you need a digital twin to measure the processes, okay? Or if you're optimizing the network, you need to measure it. We are doing actually 24/7 drive testing. So basically, these trucks, which you see them up there on the left side, are equipped, let's say, with our monitoring devices, which mean drive testing 24/7. If anybody here is from the mobile operator, are you doing this drive testing 24/7? Probably not, but they are doing it. And we are sampling the radio network per second. Do you know what is the volume of this information which we actually have here? So basically, of course, I told you we were playing with a lot of this drone stuff, with AI intelligence. In those times, it was primarily machine learning to, I don't know, to automate security part, logistic process, and so on and so on. And at the end, for sure, the separated use cases are not okay for that kind of environment. For sure that you promote, for sure that you show to each division inside of the company that it can be used, but then you need to build it in coherent way. You need to integrate everything together. And this is why another bullet, you know, in 10 commandments for the politicians is digital twin. Okay? With the digital twin, you build this replica. And if you have the data, if you can measure the data, you can optimize. Otherwise, you cannot. And that's the basic idea behind the digital twin. So this is an example what we did together with them with another European project. Maybe another message. Without European projects, we wouldn't have that kind of projects. Okay? In 2020, when you come to that kind of environments, it's not enough that you just bring idea. It's really good that you bring also the money. And the money you can get there. There is a lot of money. It is available. You should use it. So for sure, what is the future? At least, let's say in maritime, 5G, 6G, it will bring ultra low latency and availability, that kind of stuff. We saw about the AI. AI is something we need to talk because it is really, really powerful. And the next step for sure is this system intelligence, which will be, of course, in different systems. And also this edge, far edge computing to increase the autonomy and, of course, the resilience. This is also one stuff which is important. I will just give an example. Every gateway, 5G gateway which we have is actually also a Kubernetes cluster in our case. So it is a compute device, if you can imagine. So basically we are doing the processing there. Why is this important? Whatever the regulator will give you from the perspective of the frequencies, if you will use the cameras, Ultra HD camera, and you will place the camera on the edge of the cell, what will happen? I'm finished. What will happen? You will use all the bandwidth. So basically, whatever the operator gives you, if you are not using this stuff wisely, you can kill the network easily. This is an important message. So, thank you very much. Sorry that I was so long. You should stop me before.
Oh, no. Please take a seat.
Thank you very much for great presentation and very encouraging presentation about possibility to small and medium enterprises and academia collaborate in development new technological solution in this area. You little bit switch common role that public is asking and presenter is giving answer, but no, never mind. Maybe one question more now. If somebody has a question, is Professor Nešković, please.
Maybe just to share our experience in Serbia, because we also considered this part a lot regarding the industrial networks. And I fully agree with you. First of all, congratulations. This is a tremendous job. Yeah, extremely. A lot of things. And SMEs are, their major role is to be system integrator at the very end, more or less. And they are for sure the crucial part for such kind of applications. Mobile operators are too slow to do that. Yeah, that's for sure. Just one our experience, because we also think a lot about private or public network for realization of such kind. We do not have quite, you know, a clear answer to that question for now. But in Serbia, we have one example. Our refinery, which is owned by Russian side, he put their own network, but they decided to use for network part, for connectivity, to use mobile operator, not its own system, but yes, of course, separate company is working on the development of the solutions. A lot of reason was for that, because the capex is almost nothing for, you know, for the refinery. Also, at the first time they use, you know, core network of mobile operator, but they build their own and engage the people to work on it. Also, there is a quite open question. The final user to be real beneficial of it, of private network, is to be huge company. I hope that you agree. Small companies at the very end, they are on the edge of, you know, positive profit in that case. That's some our conclusions in that part.
I will be quick. For sure, you need to have the budget to build that kind of stuff, but not just to build it, you need to operate it. Yes. There are also not, it's not just the capex, but it's also an opex, okay? If you are small, for sure, you can just take the service for the mobile operator. This is the most cheapest one option which you do it. You just buy the volume of data you need and you pay the fee. If you don't need it the next month, what will you do? Just close it down. But in our case, what we are doing is we are doing also this quality assurance tool set which are used by the regulator, by the mobile operator, and so on. We actually, as an SME, need private network for our own internal development. Otherwise, we cannot test 5G standalone because neither of the mobile operators in Slovenia is supporting the 5G standalone. So we would be like a couple of decades behind our competition. That's the problem. So there are some exemptions for sure when you need to have a private network. This is one point. Another point is that I will give you an example for the port. Of course, port is a huge company. There are some industry where there is a domino effect if something went wrong. You know what happens if there is only a wind, let's say in the Luka Koper port area, which means that the ship cannot go in for, let's say, a couple of days to the port. You know, the trucks are coming, you know, from all over the Europe. What do you think happens? You get the queue on a highway to Ljubljana and next, you know, to Obrežje, which is at the Croatian side. This is like a couple of 100 kilometers. So you could have a domino effect. But you would say, of course, the mobile operator is the more skilled. They will come to site to help. How? With helicopter. There is a queue on a highway, you know? Okay, so they need to have internally, not just the, let's say, the private network, but also the network under the control, if needed. Okay.
Thank you very much. And we are coming to the last presentation by Andrej Ciglic, who is coming from Radio Frequency Spectrum Management Agency for Communication Networks and Services of the Republic Slovenia. It's always complicated. Topic is the same. It is private 5G networks, but now from regulatory framework.
And a little bit experience.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Igor Đurović already presented me, so from regulatory agency. I will try to catch a little bit for Dr. Radulović, for Professor Nešković. What there are questions which are open. So I have a few slides, so don't worry, I'm not going to be too long. This is the agenda, but just for start, there are basically the beginning two questions. First question is what already Janez exposed. On one side Wi-Fi, on the other side 5G. So a lot of companies, a lot of infrastructures companies, they found out that the Wi-Fi is not the right solutions, like ports, airports, like a heavy critical industry, like maybe what Professor Nešković said, like refineries. We have same examples. So on the other side is then why private, why not public? Because on the other side, the public mobile operators, they are not dedicated for some things. Sometimes there is a question like for the uplink, what Janez exposed. On the other side is the coverage. On the third side is like the real time. So it means the short latencies. And the last time is also in Slovenia, even today, there is no standalone 5G networks in the public operators. So those are mostly like the driver points which are dedicated that we're deciding for the private 5G network. So I will start for one example. So when we started with the private 5G networks, there was one really good case. We have on the southeast part of Slovenia a region which is not highly populated. They had problems with the water supply management. And basically the municipality acquired for the frequency, they set up the 5G network just because the mobile operator, it was not interested to cover some rural area where there are woods, let's say the areas when the water is coming from outside, the storage facilities for the water, there were no coverage. But for them, there's really important to have the information, what are the water levels, how they're going to do the pumps. And the mobile operator, public mobile operator, they are focused to cover where this population because they get the revenue there. They're not interested to cover some woods somewhere. That was like just one example, but we'll express it a little bit more. So when we started with the private 5G networks, the first question it was, how to deploy, how to award for the frequencies. Mobile operators, they usually have national level, so they cover whole Slovenia. They get license for whole Slovenia coverage. What about, let's say, what I did at the example from the southeast part of Slovenia, one municipality had a problem. They don't need whole Slovenia. So for the first things, what we need from the regulatory point of view to introduce a new licensing approach, a new licensing model. And the end of the day is we decided that we go by the municipalities. But I will tell you later, even this was not the right approach. So the preferential was like that this thing is awarded for we call it verticals, but vertical is a one word which is covering too much. You have vertical sector entities, what is one example, like water supply, I don't know, PPDR, the firefighters and such things. Then the local communities, which was also example like water supply and everybody is related to there. Then there are commercial entities, also like small companies, like Janes said. So, and when we started with this, we said, okay, we go geographically, basically aligned with the municipalities. And the second thing is what to do with the spectrum. So if we would put the spectrum on a table, mobile operators, they have a lot of money in comparison with the local communities and with the small SMEs, they would buy everything. So basically we find out that we have two types of the models. You see, the one is the spectrum where it's exclusively for the local, so for the verticals, for the local communities, small SMEs, and etc. And the second model, we call it model B. It's like, okay, there is one spectrum, we sell it to the verticals, but that the spectrum is not there on a shelf somewhere. If there is no interest, we sell it also to mobile operators. So, and as Janes said, so the band N77, it's basically by the UE Commission decided that it should be dedicated for the verticals. We will talk later a little bit also about that. The second thing is, let's say if we know how is the pricing for the public mobile operators, there's a huge pile of the money on the table, several hundred millions. We're going to have this like public awarding. We're going to have in 3 years, so we are going to be quite busy. But what to do with this local? So in general, this money goes to the government. So we needed to ask them, and they said, okay, we propose the model like price for the 10 megahertz block for the 1,000 inhabitants of the local community. Okay, at the end of the day, we came out, we said, okay, it's okay, but at the end of the day, like the municipality of Ljubljana is really expensive. Some small or even big municipality in the rural area, it's quite cheap. Nevertheless, the area is same as Ljubljana. And the second thing is that also from the government got directive that even for the annual fee, so the money which gets to the National Regulatory Agency, we also did it a discount. So it means for the small companies, this can be quite cheap. The next thing, it was like what I already exposed. What are the legal and the pricing challenges when we go there, when we go to this direction? It's maybe if you're thinking for the Montenegro in the future, you can learn a little bit all the pain we went through from this. So the first thing was what was distinction between the vertical sector and the mobile operator. It's not so easy. Let's say, for example, that some municipality buys a license for the frequency. A municipality says, I have a waste management, I have water management, I have, I don't know whatever. And they say, we buy the licenses, we are giving the opportunity for the waste management, water management, that they use their license. But legally, there are basically three different subjects. So they are three different companies. How to do? At the end of the day, there could be, let's say, operator or system integrator, and said, okay, you can host on our, which is the next topic we will discuss, and how to do this. So at the end of the day, we came up with a solution. So if you are applying for the local license, basically you are allowed to use the frequency spectrum for your own needs. And you are not allowed to earn the money with this spectrum. So mobile operator gets a spectrum to making a money, to making a business with this. And for sure, the price is higher. If you're getting the license for your own operation, the price is really cheap, but you are not allowed to make the business with this. So this was one of the things which we, firstly, it was simple. We started with this process and there we got a lot of questions. I am allowed to do this. Can I offer my spectrum also for other neighbor companies? And we said, oof. And at the end of the day, so that was the idea. You use it for your own needs and you are not allowed to making the money. The second thing is basically coming from the same question we just exposed even earlier. There's not enough engineers. There is not enough know-how in the country. Let's say if you have 10 companies, all of them, they would to set up their own 5G networks and not get a lot of competence to do it. So for sure, there are going to be some system integrators which possess the money, maybe like Janez company is similar, but we have also several others in the Slovenia, and how to do it. So the license gets, the municipality gets the license, some small company gets the license, but they do not have a knowledge to set up like a standalone 5G network together. And there is one another thing. So we basically accepted the model, so-called Moran model. So it means you need to have your own core. You can host your frequencies on the infrastructure of somebody else, but this spectrum is used just for you, and then you can do it like bilateral agreements, what is going to be the fee for the hosting such things. But the spectrum is just for your needs. They are not allowed, you can host somewhere else, but they are not allowed that some other, or let's say, or even that the system integrator make a business from this spectrum for somebody else of his own. So this is another thing. The second thing, it was like, even when we came from municipalities, first of all, when we put it like to the public consultation, we got a lot of questions. I have a small company in Ljubljana, which is covering, I don't know, like 1 square kilometer. Do I need to buy the license for the whole Ljubljana? Definitely we are killing the business in that case. So in the future steps, we came out with a solution. So if you have like medium power base stations, for sure there is a range, like you are basically covering with the signal like 10, 20 kilometers. If you're using low power base stations, the range where you're transmitting the signal is much shorter. But how to do it? So at the end of the day, we find out the solution. So we take the whole municipality populations, we calculated for each municipality how many small power base stations we could put it in the municipality, for example, Ljubljana. We're considering this like let's say some recommendation papers from the ECC, considering this if this is highly urban or rural area, because if you put a small power base stations in Ljubljana, there is a lot of buildings, the signal does not travel so far. So if you put this somewhere on the east part of Slovenia, which is highly rural, the signal even can reach like a few kilometers. And the third things we put it in consideration, so estimation of the clutter. And based on that, we calculate how many small power base stations you can put in Ljubljana, and the price which you would pay if you buy whole Ljubljana, we are dividing with this number, and then it means if you put one small base station, the price is like this. If you put, you see here the picture, if you put 4 small base stations, the price is like this. If you put like 16 base stations, the price is like this. This was basically a solution which we brought up to, and we're seeing that it's going to be quite good accepted for the small SMEs, for the small companies. And in that point of view, in Ljubljana, you can have, I don't know, like 50 private 5G networks, not just one. So this is one thing which is if you go in direction of the direction of private 5G networks, you need to pay attention. The technicals, it was like this. We had a lot of incumbent services, especially in the spectrum band N77. So when we are assigning for the private networks, we need to really pay attention. Where it's allowed, which is location. Basically, we need to do a calculation of the radio coverage for each application. That's one thing. The second thing is we need to also pay in attention. So in the same spectrum, the neighboring countries, they also have some services. There are limitations on the borders. The third thing it was, which already Janes exposed, like even when you set up the private 5G network, you need to set up MCC and NMC. So you cannot set up two private networks which are adjacent to each other and they have same, because when you come with the terminal there, the terminal would try to apply on both networks. At the end of the day, the subscriber management system will identify you are mine, you connect to mine. But nevertheless, the time of the connectivity for attaching to the network, it's longer. And the third thing is also synchronization. So synchronization when is the TDD spectrum, it's really important. And we are now, when somebody applies, we are basically, the agency is in a position of the mediator, how to discuss between each other to set up the synchronization. Just a short what we have experienced. So basically we have now two completed tendering process for the two auctions. So there were all of them, there were type B. It means this was the band 230, 360. It was like this. We give it priority for the local communities, for so-called verticals. The price was extremely discounted. So basically, if you're buying the same spectrum, if you are vertical, your price is divided by 4. Because in the second phases and in the third phase, the mobile operators, they were eligible to apply for this spectrum, but the price was 4 times higher. As I said, basically it was type B. You saw here that everybody is allowed to bid in second, third phase. In the first phase, just the verticals. There was a second auction, which is basically all the spectrum which was not assigned in the first auction was again available. Just for the numbers, for the first auction, I think it was like 8 entities getting the license. In the second auctions, it was 9 entities. So it's not fully like that everybody would jump in, but it's growing. It's coming. There was now the next auction which we have it, which Janes mentioned. It's like N77. Basically, this is in a process for the starting now. We already have like the second public consultation, where we got all of those complaints for the SMEs and such things. The spectrum here is much more. Basically, we are limited for the existing incumbent services. There are some microwave links, neighboring countries. And this is, as we said, as the European Commission said, it's dedicated or our pioneering band just for the local private 5G networks. Okay. What are the next steps for the future? So to continuation with activities for these third auctions for the N77. We have in the pipeline also, there was from the European Commission dedicated band for machine to machine. It's 700 band, but I think it's just 2 times 3 megahertz. We have planned to do this in 28. There was electric distribution company interested in this, but later they step out. I know why they step out because the problem is with the equipment. So there are some modems available which covering N28 band. They're not all of them, and they're buying the electricity meters. If there's some company producing just the meters for them, they're going to be expensive. So it's a scale of economy there. So there is also for the future, we saw also a huge, or let's say a a big bandwidth available for the bands for the 26 and 28 gigahertz. They say that the future is going to be, but this is going to be based on the exposed interest from the industry's entities. And there is also a second request for the tender for 410. On the first auctions, it was no exposed industries. I think that there is a same limitation. The problem is with the equipment, because you need to have special equipment. Basically, there are just the last slide. What we want to do in the future is like spectrum auctions, which is covering verticals and the public-private usage. Public tenders, transparency, like national agency, you know, we need really to pay attention for the transparency, and for the futures to make environment as much as appropriate for the small players, for the small companies. So it means we call it this Article 47 because in that case, for this spectrum N77, we try to set up the system where if you are going to be just small company, you just go to the website, you say, I would like to need here, I don't know, like 50 megahertz spectrum in this area, and the system is going to automatically calculate the interference and say it's available, you can get it. So we'll try also to little bit optimize all the official procedures for the application, so that's try to make the procedures for the small SMEs as much as convenient, as much as possible. And even as I said, so that the pricing level for the small SMEs, this is cheap. Basically, they pay a license. I don't know. Just I can check it later if you're interested. But this is like several thousand euros for the 10 years, which is no big deal. License, it shouldn't be limitations to grown up in the manner of the private 5G networks. And that's it. So as I said, we would like to be aligned with the technological and the market developments. We would like to hear all the industries, so all the stakeholders to make up the ecosystem to do this, and efficient and transparent spectrum management. Feel free to ask any questions. For some of the questions specific, I will need to take some other papers, but for a lot of things, just
maybe you can take a seat if you
okay,
if you want to.
I would like to ask a question related to this machine-to-machine, especially because 3G is phased out probably next couple of years. 2G will be phased out as well. And what is the plan in Slovenia? How you would suggest to distributor of electric energy to do this machine-to-machine communication for electrometers for consumption of electrical energy?
So the idea of these electro distribution companies is to use 4G solution currently, and they basically we got a written initiative to the agency, and most probably they just made market analysis for available devices and they changed their mind. But in general, it's not this technology which should be related. It's like technology neutral, but basic idea is to use 4G or 5G. In the future, the 5G. The problem is the terminal equipment availability. So it's not 2G. For the 2G, you know what's happening in the 2G phase out. I read it. There was in Sweden they did it. They faced serious problems because they have legally they need to have to provide the service so-called A-call, which is in cars emergency, yes. Which was some several millions of the cars that are still on the roads which have this equipment which was 2G oriented. So 2G and 3G phase outs, there were some tries. They're going to come for sure. The technology 4G and 5G is much more technically better regarding the green things and all the better services, but it's not so easy because there are so much incumbent services there. And basically in Sweden, they thought that's going to be easy. At the end of the day, there was like a cold shower. It's not so easy.
Just another question to connect everything. Since we mentioned that some companies could develop their private network, in the case of electrical distribution company, for them, is it possible to think to have their own network, since many of them are actually providers for optical cables, so they have own optical network, they can use it for their own purpose, but usually they don't do that, they just rent probably optical fiber setup. But they have a good opportunity to have their private networks, even for fixed communication, and also to use the same for transfer the data between some mobile stations. Is there any possibility to think in that way? So huge company could have private network.
You mean private fiber network?
No, private mobile network.
Basically, if you just can you repeat just the question?
They have their own fiber network.
Yeah.
Because it is easily to deploy.
Mm-hmm.
They did that in Montenegro, but they didn't use it for their own purpose to have the local telecommunication centrals, to equipment, to exchanges to be connected and to use on their own.
Mm-hmm.
They actually transferred to be the users for some mobile fixed operator in Montenegro, and they are using something like, let's say, it is some way of fixed exchanges that are connected to the directly to the
to operators, yeah.
operator. But in the case that since they have their own network, they could use for their local purpose all these exchanges on their network, not pay to the operators anything. But they didn't do that. I'm just asking, is there any idea how those great companies like National Electrical Supplier could use some own network for their purpose, collecting the data for electrometers to connect the different dispatch units and departments, etc. Because just to put the expenses down, not to pay to the operator.
So that's the idea. That's they're basically doing, the electro distribution companies. So, but in Slovenia currently, the majority of the electrical meters that are connected via the power line, so GTPLC. But nevertheless, they have their own fiber networks, and they're basically using as a closed networks just for their use. The 5G networks, basically, they are coming from two aspects. One aspect, when you have mobility, it means like, there's example in the port, you have like moving cranes, so you cannot use it fiber there or such things. Yes. That's one thing. And the second thing is we use it where would be physical infrastructure. So let's say you cannot do fiber network to each house for the meter. You could do it. I know that in Kingdom Saudi Arabia, they try to do it. But in Slovenia, the meters there are in cellars. There's basically, they want to have their network. In that case, if they're not able to have the physical connectivity there, they're using the 5G. So it's cheaper to set up the 5G wireless service than the laying out additional cables.
Okay, but you know, Israel already used the energy network to transmit the signals in telecommunications.
Yeah, okay, even in Slovenia, what we have, it's a national, like, on top level distribution company, it's called LS. So they have all the high voltage lines and such things.
And they can use it as a communication.
They basically
modulate that signal.
Yeah, they basically, when they build up these electricity cables on a top level, they also made an optic fiber, and they have their own company operating just this optic fiber. So it's for sure. Even when you said that they're connected to some public fiber operator, or something like that, you don't do this if you don't have any really good reason. So because just because if they most probably lacking of the knowledge or competent personnel for the maintenance, or is the OPEX cheaper in that way if they use it by themselves. That's just the two aspects, I think. But for sure, in Slovenia, electricity distribution companies, they have their own networks. They basically, none of them, they do not rely on a public operators, except maybe because there were in the past some high-end meters, I don't know, for the big companies, which the consumption really high, they use it as a mobile modem inside, which were operated from the public mobile operators. But even in that point of view, they wanted to move this to the private 4G networks, as I said.
Thank you very much for presentation. First of all, because we didn't realize that your presentation is also great. But I now want to, before conclude this roundtable, I want to move a question to Milan. Where is Montenegro in this regulation of private 5G networks?
At this moment, we had that opportunity, but nobody asked yet for any kind of private 5G network. Okay. But we planned that in our radio frequency plan. In our radio frequency plan, we have that opportunity, but still so far we don't have any one
request
who applied for such kind of private network.
Yes.
If I may comment, Andrei, will you share the experience?
Yeah.
We had the same issue in Slovenia. So basically, you need to step in actively to promote it. So like they do it at ACOS. Andrei, please.
Yeah. Basically, we did it in the last 3 years at four events where we invited all the interesting parties or potential stakeholders. When we invited there, we invited also all the competent companies personnel, even Janus was there, and tried to make some kind of marketing why to step in. Even, as I said at the beginning, even as Janus said, let's say the national airport of Slovenia, they find out the Wi-Fi, we cannot survive. The port of Koper, they found out the Wi-Fi, we cannot survive. The first example I gave it, so southeast part of Slovenia, they found out we cannot control our critical resources like a water supply. And all of them, but it was, at the beginning, it was like something starting with a promotion to share the knowledge, why it's good for, what the technology is capable. The only thing what we are not able to share is how much does it cost. So this is much more in the area of the honest. But a lot of them, they found out that this is the right approach. Even some of the companies, they find out they have industry, which is, I don't know how it's basically livarna. I don't know what is so what is the English word even Serbian. So like steel industry, they found out that their processes, they are so critical, the timings, the reportings, some alarms if something is happening, that the existing technologies like Wi-Fi, it's not good enough. And basically we have quite some of the companies which already stepped in. We need this.
I have one comment still, because I was part of this story. We had a lot of events. At the beginning, we were convinced. You know, we were like mobile operators, SMEs which were doing the well, all these tier one, providers of equipment went there. And we were just convincing the convinced. So don't expect that when you will organize the first event, you will attract the community.
Actually, this is the first event.
Okay.
It was our idea to move the people to come here, just to make them to be interested to come here to hear the experiences from Serbia, from Slovenia, and abroad, from native nation, from the whole Europe and the whole world, in order to get the information what they can do with 5G, whatever, public or private here. Fortunately, we have operators together with us today, but private sector, industry, we try to mobilize them to come here, but first event, it wasn't.
The last comment. What you need to do, engage Chamber of Commerce, engage industry, but they need to talk first, not you, not the industry. They need to tell the challenges. And then, you know, other will come, the mobile operator, the technology provider, and solve their challenges. But bring them first. Bring the vertical, and they need to present, you know, the problem, and they will invite the community because they trust them more than, you know.
Today we are fortunate because in one person we have two institutions, Academy or Montenegrin Academy of Science and Arts, which is Professor Đurović, and also he is the employee at the University of Montenegro. So we have two academic institutions in one person to be present here. So we are very much obliged that he will transfer this message from this round table.
Professor Nešković has a brief question, and then we are going to conclude this event and to refreshment to continue the discussion.
Okay.
Just one short question. How do you control the misusage of that spectrum? You know, you are giving them to use for their own purposes, but it's just you know very easy to use for public domain.
And Germany didn't came to this situation yet. But the part of the national agency is also so-called like inspection supervision. Currently, let's say if somebody would use unauthorized spectrum, we have equipment, we have know-how and people which can identify. More problem is going to be, you had in mind this legally. Yeah, it means that somebody would get a spectrum from the local community and use it for the public services. But I think this is not going to be so hard because you're going to immediately know from which operator it is. Maybe, I don't know, if we're going to have like a regular drive-by testing or something like that. We'll see, but we're not there yet. Till now, there was no exposure of that yet.
But there is possibility for the internal.
There is a possibility. Regardless, when our licenses, when we gave the license to somebody, there is paper, it's quite a lot of things written there. What is a lot, and there are also quite high penalties. So, especially, okay, for this, most probably it's not going to be so critical because the prices for the SMEs, they're really low. But let's say if there is a mobile operator which is paying for spectrum several hundred millions of euros, and if he is going to do something which is not allowed, he basically loses all the money, which is a huge money.
You know, just have in mind, for example, just one example, you have water company in Ljubljana. And the water company have some agreement with taxi company for their own purposes, for example, and they are offering and allow them to use that network. That taxi company can use that for many other purposes, not only for jobs with the water supply companies. It's not easy to distinguish into control. Just I'm asking, but okay, the time will show. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, please.
When we setting up this framework, there were a lot of such companies. So at the end of the day, we came up. Maybe some water company would give the ability to some taxi company to use this, but they are not allowed to making money of this, which is hard to control. But at the end of the day, you can check the bills. Yeah, if they pay allegiance, yeah, it's not easy, but it's like this, yeah. For sure, the approach that for the verticals and for the small SME companies, that they would need to pay the same price as public mobile operators, this for sure would kill the industry. Yeah. So we were definitely forced to give special factor discounts for this, because we know that the mobile operators, they are earning with the spectrum, they're making business with the spectrum.
Thank you very much to all presenters. Thank you very much for Milan for organizing this event. And I hope that we will continue with discussion to refreshment, but also I hope that we will continue organizing such or similar events in Montenegrin Academy of Science and Arts in attempt to boost this area in both academia and business, both business in high business with communication providers, but also to SMEs. Thank you very much for taking part in our event, and I hope for future fruitful collaboration on all levels. Thank you very much.